Hello! Welcome to another session of Half for You Heroes. I'm Katie Quixotic. You can find me everywhere as Katie Quixotic, and I'll be DMing today, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Carl. I'm playing Lafcadio Whitehorn, the Tabaxi Warlock.
Hello, I'm Vinny. I will be playing Kale Irvine, the half-elven cleric of Denier.
I'm Casey H on social media, and I will be playing the champion of Time More Impaler of Plains, Heckler Big Fire Chicken, She Who Fights Storm, Slayer of Shadows, Nos, the boss of Neverwinter.
Good morning. My name is Graham, or Graham Practice on Twitch. I play your friendly neighborhood Taslan Evrio Necromancer Shadarkai Wizard.
I love that you change the order of things every time, and so I never really know what to expect. And Carl, do we do the recap first, the announcements? I never remember.
I will
take care of the housekeeping first.
Yeah.
The next 2 weeks, this game will not be playing. However, next week, in our place, there will be a one-shot that Graham is running, which is part of a longer 24-hour full of D&D stream in support of Extra Life. Our channel is raising money for the Dell Children's Medical Center in Austin. We have a modest goal of $250 to raise during the day. We're already more than halfway there, thanks to our awesome community. So I'll post a link in chat to that charity. But next week, tune in and check out all the amazing one-shots. Also have a chance to win a legendary bundle from D&D Beyond. Just be in chat. The giveaway for the 1-year anniversary of Fate's Chosen was done on this past Monday. And all you had to do was type a word in chat and you were entered in to win. So I presume it'll be something similar to that. And those are the announcements.
Woo! Who would like to do the recap?
I'll do the recap.
Woohoo!
So if I could just get a little reminder of everything that happened from someone else, then I can reimagine it in a much less exciting way. No takers? Okay, that's fine. Let's see. We flew through a portal into the flight. Well, I flew. We were in the Feywild. Hello. We went to the Feywild. Immediately upon our arrival, we were assaulted/accosted by some Eladrin, one each to represent the 4 different seasons. Cool. One of them got turned into some fairy dust or something. 2 of them ran off, and one of them, I believe it was the Summer Eladrin, we were able to speak to. I don't know. I was going to say we made friends with them, but that's not really. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Go way back now.
Yeah, we go way back. And if
You're not friends.
If you talk about that dragon and that big fight and everything, they're just going to be like, "Why you got to bring up old shit?" So we talked to them, and they're like, "Hey, if you wanna find out how to control time when you leave the Feywild, then go talk to the Rose Court." So we were like, "Okay," and we got on our magic flying carpets that we have that cost a lot of money, and we never returned. And we're flying down to the Rose Court because it happened to be in the same direction that we were gonna go anyway to get to Mithrendain.
Mithrendain. That's his new name now. We're done. That's canon.
All right. That's where we're going to find Kale's mom because he just kind of feels like it now. And for no other reasons. And we ended the session with our heroes spotting in the distance the great spires of the citadel of the Rose Court or whatever it was, and beginning to enter the final stretch of that part of the journey to talk to those people about controlling time for now and forever to meet our diabolical ends. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
The only thing I want to point out to everyone is that you knew the rough location of Mithrendain, and that the Rose Quartz was perhaps somewhere inside or nearby. So, because I probably didn't communicate this clearly, you think those spires could be one or the other. It's not really clear what the quartz are or where they might be. So either this is the place that's going to house the Rose Quartz, not Rose Quartz, that's a stone, or it is Mithrendain, and you'll find out more when you get there. I was like, I don't think I actually explained that very well, so...
I might just not remember it very well.
You're not the only one who has said it, though. So I'm like, everyone's like, we're on our way to the Rose Quartz. And I'm like, that's my fault.
All right. Well, we figured it out. We got there, family.
Yeah, that's what sending spells are for.
Yeah.
For first level spell slots.
Yeah, first level spell slots.
I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
Yeah, that wasn't a correction for your recap. That was like everybody's been talking about that in the Discord, in the tweet. It was like, we're heading to the Rose Court. And I was like, okay, I clearly led everyone astray here. Oh, an accident. So it's okay. It's the Feywild. It's supposed to be confusing.
It's true. And we're really bad at following directions anyways.
We?
What are you trying to say?
Nothing.
Ooh, shots fired. Okay, so I think we left off where you were kind of heading on in towards the basically like the boundary of the forest, and you could see things off in the distance. And the decision point was, okay, it's getting towards the end of the day. We haven't really done much today. Do we want to push through for the next couple of hours, or do we want to stop here and like make camp?
And the decision, I believe, was made by everybody except Kale, who, after getting bitched at, decided to prepare a fucking holy temple and create food and water spells and stuff, because everybody was like, oh, you didn't prepare any of that stuff last time. We are going to bed down for the night. Blah, blah, blah. But now everybody's like, all right, well, let's just keep going. Now that you prepared totally different spells that won't be useful in this situation, probably. Let's just you're creative. You'll figure it out. That's what everybody said that to me after the game last week. We're in the Feywild. Time is relative.
It's true.
Or something.
It's really only been a few minutes since last session.
Exactly.
Tell us how you really feel, Benny.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Mute, but then talking, so it's coming up in the captioning.
So anyway, I believe we were going to go to the place, right? That was the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I reckon.
All right. Get my map open. Okay. So, as you come up on the edge of the border of the forest here, you can tell that it's still going to be about 4-ish hours to get to these large spires that you notice as a landmark, and you're not exactly quite sure what they probably are, but maybe a city, maybe a court, something along those lines. And there's this large dip where a lot of them sort of reside. And then off to the left, you do see a great... This one is probably more of a tree because it seems to have more foliage on the way up as opposed to just having sort of like a canopy feel to the top of it. The other structures look fundamentally different. This is a tree that is so large that you can see it taller, thicker, more foliage, like fuller canopy, even from as far away as you are. It's not like miles tall or anything, but it's kind of like not an eyesore, a landmark, I guess you might say. So you're going to head straight for the city, flying over the forest is the plan. How high?
200 feet above everything.
Okay.
I want to see all the stuff.
On a magic carpet ride. Okay. So, is anyone keeping an eye on the surroundings around as you go by, or is it just kind of like making a beeline at this point?
I like to think Tassin will be like looking down at like the layout.
Okay. Go ahead and make a perception check. Is anyone playing Wampum today, or are we just going to assume he's quiet, by the way?
Get me off this carpet.
Oh, I have to go
Also,
look at
that's
it.
not 20.
Oh, hey.
So 20.
Oh.
Oh no.
Nice. Ooh.
And now I'll have low rolls for the rest of the episode.
You know what? But you got one good roll, and that's
Sure.
better than no good rolls. We have a record now in my Sunday game where we played an entire session and I didn't roll above a 10 once. Oh no, I did one time, but it wasn't a crit, so you know. Anyway, so as you all are high up in the air passing over, luckily with your heritage, your eyes are just very keen in general, not having human eyes, and you notice several things as you all start to pass over the top of the forest. You can see that there is much more life. Even from as far away as you are, you can't necessarily see what might be causing all the individual movement, but as opposed to the sort of general sway in the wind that like the forest canopy would have, there are individual rustlings, and there are a lot of them. So it's markedly more busy in general in this forest than the one that you entered into the Feywild in and traveled over to exit. And you'll catch glimpses as you pass over the edge. There is that sort of like curling mist, of course, and then you'll catch flashes of what looks like maybe in like a clearing there's like some sort of brightly colored fruit growing on a tree, and there's a point where you see sort of like like lights kind of under illuminating the leaves that are over in the canopy, and you think that must be some kind of like magic, probably, because it's like it ebbs and flows, and it's different colors, a little silvery, a little bit gold at one point. So something else is going on down there. But being as high up in the air as you are, everything's pretty far away, and so it's more like you're just catching the edges of whatever activity is going on down there. So like I said, it'll take about probably about 3 or 4 hours to, well, probably about 3.5 hours if you're going like your normal speed to reach what you estimate to be the exact point of the towers. So as you get closer to, and this is, everyone can see this, as you get closer to what these like long structures, you can see kind of like poking up over the top of this like decline in the ground and the normal like horizon line. You start to see what looks like almost like marble buildings, fine structures with big columns. They're really long and slender and graceful, and there's flying buttresses and this sort of like almost Victorian-esque, if we were to explain it in modern day architecture, where a lot of the what look like windows have that sort of like diamondy pane sort of things under them, and there's stained glass in a lot of them, and you can only tell from as far away as you still are because the like twilight is reflecting off of them differently, and the sort of like oranges and purples in the sky are showing in the lights from these windows. And there are about 7 of these really tall, graceful, and the closer you get, the more you realize it looks like these are more made from like a light colored wood than marble, but it has that very sort of like white gleaming look to it. Of course, they're all sort of twilight-ish colored, reflecting the light from the sky, but you can tell the difference between what the color of the structure is and the light reflecting off of it thanks to the windows. And they do branch out at the tops into these large trees with big frondy leaves, these like sort of hanging canopies over the top. And then in the center of them, a shorter structure seems to be what's best described as a fortress. Now, this city that you're sort of being able to start to pick out, since there's this lower elevation, branches far out. So there's almost like you might think like a fallback fortress or some sort of central structure that is protected or has this large wall, which is really unusual for the Feywild. I'm not sure exactly how much you've traveled here before, but they are free-spirited and interested in not controlling others or putting boundaries on them. Most Fey are anyway. Some, of course, really delight in that. But in general, you don't see, this is really human-influenced almost, or like mortal world influence, the idea of this inner sanctum or central building that has this large, like 40, 50 foot wall with like the parapet type stuff around the top on it. And it's a different color. It does seem to be maybe made of stone. It's kind of like a darker, like gray slate-esque type color, but there's like vines growing all over it. And nature has sort of like partially reclaimed it in a way, or maybe just like the natural tendency of the forest is to kind of take over anything that's placed in it. But that, as opposed to these large spires, which seem like they're almost like carved from the trunks of trees, this seems to be a deliberately placed, more like square set built structure. And there are deliberately made like streets that come out from the center to the outside. So you have this like central fortressy type structure, and then these spires kind of around it, not in like a perfect circle or anything, but they're kind of dotted, these 7 around it. And then there are just these snaking streets, and a lot of them lead from the center all the way to the edges of the city, where you see individual homes built, similarly to the spires, kind of almost like carved from trees, but it's more like probably druid-esque type magic, where they're causing trees to grow and have big hollow spaces in them. And you'll see clumps of 4 or 5 of these sort of like tree, thick-trunked houses. And it's almost like, it looks like it could be like river and tributaries, but very deliberately planned, where you can walk into the edge of the city at almost any point and can see for several hundred feet at the very least, if not almost all the way to the center, due largely in part to the elevation and in part to the like layout of this city. So how far away are you just going to fly right over into it? Or are you going to land at some point and like head in on foot? What's the plan when you start to see this off in the distance and you get closer to it to start picking out these types of details?
We should land and try to not bypass any of their security measures if we want to make friends.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So where do you do that?
I would think all the way on the outside somewhere. Like you described that there were maybe like homes and stuff kind of on the outskirts of this geometric thing that's happening. I figure maybe just outside of one of those, and we maybe scout around and see if we can find one that looks like there might be signs of life there, and see if there's somebody we could talk to and ask what's up, what
what's up. Yeah, I mean, as you get closer, you do see individual creatures kind of going out, presumably about their daily business. Until you were to get much closer, it would be difficult to discern their specific nature. In terms of like what type of fae they might be. So how many feet away specifically are you all planning on like touching down and heading on in?
Is it like really forested kind of outside of this area?
Yeah.
So?
Thick, dense forest, excuse me, and canopy. Thick, dense forest and canopy leading in. And then there's like a bit of a sort of like tree line almost that kind of thins out as it hits to the city, but it's pretty much within like 50 feet basically that the tree line starts to thin, and you see what looks more like these home structures with these like big thick trunked trees that have windows set into them and what looks like doors as you get closer.
Excuse me. My thinking is that we should maybe not. We should do whatever we can to make sure that they don't see us flying on carpets and into the area. So like I would suggest we'd go down into the woods, kind of outside, and then walk the rest of the way, like a quarter mile or something.
Yeah. I'd agree, especially because that's going to be outside of ballista range, I believe, as well.
Yeah. That sounds like a wonderful plan.
Okay. All right, so you start to head down closer to the ground. You will be landing in the forest because there is such a small space between the edge of the city and the real like tree line, I guess. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my throat. So you're able to pick your way through the canopy fairly easily. These trees don't seem to be like alive or inhibiting you. It's just really like dense space. But you can easily enough find like a sort of thinner space or a bit of like a parting in the trees to kind of like land down in onto the soft grass and the leaves that have fallen and such below you. In this sort of like perpetual twilight, it's interesting to see that some of the trees look like they're green and it's fresh and spring, and some of them look more like they're autumny and they've got red and orange leaves, and some of those have fallen on the ground too. And so it's this weird interspersed mix of what you would see in multiple seasons in the natural world. So once you're on the ground, you wouldn't have a clear line of shot anymore. You have the general direction, though, so if someone wants to make a survival check, or multiple people want to, as you pick your way through the forest.
Why, certainly.
I'll do it too.
Okay.
I got
17.
24.
Okay. Yeah, so is there anything specific anyone wants to be doing as you're kind of heading in and getting closer?
Taslim will be watching behind them to make sure they're not being followed.
Okay, make a perception check.
Yeah, same. Watching for movement.
Same for you then?
13.
14.
All right. So as you land, you've had such a good clear shot of this, and there's kind of like the natural sort of, you're not yet on the portion that starts to kind of slope down. It is a little bit steep at one point, but you're to land a quarter of a mile away. You're a little bit outside of that, but it's easy enough to start traveling in the general direction, and then to sort of feel that natural like decline in ground. Just kind of like, you're heading the general right direction since you didn't see anything else like that in the area that wasn't heading towards the city. You don't notice anything, Taslin and I almost said Casey. Nas. As you're keeping your eyes and ears out, you're looking around behind you. You're seeing now these the similar sort of like squirrely but bigger and fluffier creatures that you saw before, and there are lots of like movement up in the trees, but they're moving too quickly for you to really catch them. You don't see any of the mist around that you'd seen before. Nas, you do see off in the distance there is a tree with these apples that are there's a few like apple trees, and not necessarily an orchard, but clearly an apple tree was planted or just grew here at some point, and others have grown up and around it. But there's one that has fruit that is really brightly colored, and instead of being like a bright red shiny apple, there's a bright blue one and then a dark blue one, and there's like a fuchsia-esque type color to one, and one has sort of this golden shine to it, and there's this really interesting tree off in the distance. And other than that, it seems like you're traveling through a weird forest.
I bet the squirrels are druids.
Perhaps. Would you like to try and speak to one?
No, I'll just nod respectfully to all of them as I pass. Hello. Yes, good day.
Okay. Perfect.
But the real question is, do any of them respond?
Well, do you actually say good day to them?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. You don't seem to see any reaction from them that would that could be interpreted as them like acknowledging it in a particular way. You do see, just like you imagine any natural sort of like prey animal would, kind of like making a berth as you all start to walk through the imposing and intimidating figures that you are.
Okay.
So, as a member of the Emerald Enclave, Lefcadio, I would know that sometimes messages are sent via animal. So as Nos is humoring herself, he's like playing with the squirrels, I'm actually looking to see if any of them do respond to her, in case there's a special message that I need to receive.
Okay.
I'm not playing. This is a diplomatic mission.
There you go. That's fair. It's a diplomatic mission to Alderaan. Go ahead and make... I think this would be more along the lines of probably insight, or you could say... I would say insight or more of an investigation than general perception, because you're paying attention to something specifically and trying to study it. So whichever of those you think would be more in your wheelhouse.
19 for insight.
Nice. Most of them seem to be creatures, and whether or not they understand the conversation that's happening isn't necessarily clear. That some of them do stop and take note. Let's see.
Is that squirrel
None
talk?
seem to. Yes. It's me absolutely making noises. But yes, we'll say that it's squirrels making noises. There are, you happen to notice as you're kind of studying and paying attention to certain creatures, you'll see in the background more like deer-looking creatures, but they've got these sort of like long curly horns to them that are like interesting in a way. And one of them has, it almost looks like they must have gotten theirs stuck in some sort of bracket, and there's like vines winding all through it. And that's something you just like notice in the background as you're looking at these squirrels that she's talking to. None of them seem to be absorbing information at present. Anyway, there's not like an acknowledgement that you can like read on their faces. You feel confident in that too. You're looking and you don't think you're missing anything. It just doesn't seem to be that these can care or understand necessarily what's being said. What languages did you say that in, by the way, Nas?
Common.
Common. Okay, yeah. That's what it sounded like, but I just wanted to double check. Yeah. So y'all can continue on the way. You will, when you hit the... Did somebody put their hand up? Oh, you were dancing. Okay. When you... I thought that was like a 1 second sort of thing. When you hit the edge of the sort of thicker tree line, and you can tell that it's starting to thin out as more of this like twilight is sort of streaming in, and you can start to see breaks into the sky. Again, you're able to get a closer look at the houses that are on the edge, and it's if you've ever seen, there's these trees in, I think it's like the Philippines, where the main tree will grow and then little like shoots of the tree will grow around it, and they curl around it and almost choke off the original tree. But it's how they like build out and make the tree wider. And that's how these little groupings of houses look, where none of them look like they were necessarily the central. They kind of like come out of the ground almost all from the same sort of zone, and they come up and they kind of twist around, not necessarily coming together to make an individual tree, but they have that sort of like lean towards each other in the middle. And there are individual doorways and there are windows in some of them, and none of them are sort of like cookie cutter like you might expect on the material plane. Every one of them is a little bit unique. The windows might be placed differently, the doors might be placed differently. Either they take care in their building, or perhaps each individual creature is able to make their own. It's kind of hard to say. So another thing you notice behind the sort of like outer edges of these, first of all, the sort of first main road that you can kind of see off to the side, you've got a pretty good shot several hundred feet past this sort of outskirty area. And for the most part, you just see these like groupings of what look like they would be houses. You do notice that there are some windows that are taller and thinner, as opposed to the sort of wider ones that have the glass sort of like pane look to them. A lot of them are covered in ivy and different foliage too, so those are a little bit obscured in a way, but you can see the reflection, sort of the shine on something that might be glass, or who knows, magic force field for all you know. But there are taller, thinner, like almost like adjacent to some of the windows, these like smaller looking windows that don't have a shine to them, but they look like windows. That's the best way to describe it. And you see about interspersed about maybe like 100 feet apart-ish, you see these large marble-ish looking stones that are set into these stone bases. And I want everyone to make just like a general Arcana check.
Natural 1.
Nice. I love it.
22.
24 again. Hey, look at me go.
As you were heading towards what you could tell just by virtue of like seeing a lighter area in the distance, the edge of the tree line from within, you all started to feel almost this sort of vibration through your entire bodies. And as you got closer, it became like almost a tangible hum that was maybe not in your ears directly, but like something you were hearing off in the distance. And as you sort of break the edge of the tree line, Taslin and Kale can feel almost a sort of palpable magic presence. And you're able to tell based on your checks that it's almost as if it's radiating out and has like a body to it. And that kind of gives you that like pressed upon like vibration through your feet feeling. And everyone can hear this like deep, low hum kind of in the distance. Is what it sounds like, but you can tell that it's coming from the direction of this large, like 5-foot diameter, marble carved, like perfect spear that's set into this stone. The one that's closest to you.
So it. Kill's gonna try and just hold up the drift globe and cast the light cantrip on it. Just like tap it, try and light it up.
Okay. What, go ahead and put the light spell in, or cantrip in Roll20 for me.
Did it do it? It did.
Yeah. You hold up the drift globe and it hovers but kind of dips a little bit, and you cast the light cantrip on it, and it lights up.
Okay.
What's all that about, Kale?
I don't know. I think it's maybe some sort of suppression field.
Field? You just walk through a forest.
Zone, area, sphere, invisible sphere, magic.
Magic.
Okay, well, let's stop standing here like assholes. Let's get
Yeah.
some people out here, huh? Hello!
Whoa, hold on. Don't. Let me handle this part. And Kale will also shout hello, but he'll do it in Sylvan.
Ah. How do you say hello in Sylvan?
It's like saying hello in common, but it's completely different.
Oh, okay. That's technically an answer, and I will accept it. I was going to try to make you make something up. But I like that, so we'll go with it. So you, Nas, yell hello, and you are all close enough at this point to see there seems to be some sort of like elvish looking figure outside one of the houses, and maybe they're painting it, or they're maybe repairing something. They're doing something, and they're making this sort of like brushing or like moving motion. Maybe they're like sanding something. It's hard to say. You do hear this sort of like clinking sound in the distance, as if someone were working a forge and pounding metal. Maybe there's movement off where you can see further in a lot of people walking up and down the street. The sun never sets here, so it's always twilight, but you know that this is like real world time. You feel like it's like 10 o'clock. It's hard to say what time it might be in the Feywild. There's a lot of activity, so either this city has a lot of activity, or maybe this is the like morning crowd or the night crowd. Like, and when Nas yells hello, the person sort of on the very edge that was doing some sort of like fluid motion stops and turns around, looking like confused. And then when you say hello, the posture looks, when you Kale say hello, the posture looks a little less confused and more like they're turning around to see who's saying that. And there's several other figures. They're all dressed in like various sort of like autumny color, like robe-looking garments. They're split at the front, and you can see that there's like a matching like pant that goes along with it. So instead of like long draping robes, it's almost like a long tunic that kind of opens to the front. There's like a few that are in more of like a goldish color, and then a few that are in more like a burnt orange, and then there's more like this foresty sort of like deep brown to one of them, and then there's another that looks like it's like a mossy sort of green color. And as a few of them stop and take note, you see 3 of the maybe like 6 or 7 that happen to be on the outside kind of move towards their doors and just kind of wait at looking at the 4 of you to see what you're going to do.
Kel continues in Sylvan, and he asks, he says, hello, we're travelers here. We're not obviously from around these parts, and we were wondering if someone could tell us where it is we have arrived.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check.
Hold on. 8.
8. I love it. So the 3 or so that had kind of moved closer to their doors go inside. There is one. She looks to be a young woman, like jet black hair. It's pulled back in these elaborate braids. She's come around the side of one of these like tree home buildings, and she's got like a big hammer in her hands, but it looks more like a blacksmith's hammer than like a weapon. Like she's come around with something to like defend herself with, and she's got this thick leathery looking apron on over these really fine clothes, and she's sort of curiously watching all of you and sort of
An elf with a hammer.
off with the hammer. Listen, you. Taslin's like, laborers. And she looks kind of curiously, and she doesn't say anything for a moment as she's studying all of you. And she seems to kind of, not like relax, because her posture didn't look aggressive in any way, but kind of like lean back against the building almost and gestures behind her and says, "You've come here and you don't know where you're at?"
To be fair, I don't usually know where I am.
Well, this was in Sylvan. Do you speak Sylvan?
I speak Elvish. Would that count?
I feel like
Probably
if you
not.
speak Elvish, then hearing Sylvan would be... okay, so there's this movie. It's like a music video, actually. And it's called Prison Colonine Suzel. It was made by an Italian... Case knows what I'm talking about. It was made by an Italian who didn't speak English, who said they wanted to write a song to tell you what English sounded like to a non-native speaker. So when you listen to the song, everyone can go Google it later. It's like a 70s style music video, and it's very like I don't know. I'm just like dancing because I can hear the music in my head right now, but you'll understand when you go watch it. You listen to it, and it's like you can pick out words, and you're like, oh, I heard what they said just then, and it's like right on the edge of your understanding. None of them are real words. So you're like, you keep listening, and you're like, did she just say leaf? No, that can't be it. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, I feel like I should know this, but I don't. It's weird.
Yeah.
So that's what it sounds like to you. But you can still yell at Common if you would like. She's just so good to acknowledge you.
No, I'm good. I redact my previous statement.
Okay.
Nope. If you could help illuminate for us our location, we would really appreciate that.
What did you come here for?
Oh, we were looking for the fuck is it? Place. We're looking for a place named Mithrendain.
Mithrendain. Yes. Oh, you found it.
Yes.
Good.
It's kind of hard to miss.
As evidenced, yes. I'm looking for someone in particular, actually. a woman, presumably from, I believe you call it here, the Mud World, named Serial.
She stops and she kind of ponders, it looks like, for a moment, perhaps, and she says, sounds like a common name. Make an insight check. She's got that sort of like playful body posture where she's kind of like, at this point, she's like kind of put the hammer down to the side and is like leaning into this building. And it's not really clear whether or not she's still interested in having, or not still, maybe she was never interested in having like a genuine conversation. But she's got this sort of like playful air to her where it's really difficult to tell whether or not she's just like saying stuff to you to see what you'll do.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if it helps, I imagine she would look something like me, maybe similar skin tone or hair color or something.
Out of character question, what does the Mud World mean? Never heard that.
Oh, it's just, yeah, I forget where I heard it, but someone was talking about the Fae at one point, like a thread somewhere that I was reading, and they were describing that, like, that's how the Fae would think of the prime material plane.
Okay. I was like, where's the Mud World in the Feywild?
I guess there is literally like an elemental area of mud.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah, not what I was going for.
Okay, that's fine. And what was it that you just asked? I'm sorry.
He said if it helps, she would probably have like a similar skin tone to mine, or maybe like hair color. She'd probably look generally the same way I look. She'd be like an elf from the Mud World, or from the mundane lands of the prime material.
I mean, there are people that look like you, I suppose. What are you going to do if you find this person in this huge city? And to be fair, and I probably didn't do a good job of describing this, the scope of this city is huge. You could probably house 40,000 people in the like breadth of it. This is massive. You can see really far in because they've built this system where you can almost from the very outside see clearly defined roads that lead almost all the way to this like citadel sort of structure in the middle. But it is huge in this sort of like sprawling basin. It's just this massive city with various like huge structures towards the middle that are like look like these larger homes or some sort of like offices or something like that. So it's kind of like you're on the borders of like this massive town, and human cities have walls, so you expect to encounter some sort of like established guard, but this doesn't have that. And so you're just talking to some person who's like, okay, there's like this massive city behind us. Like, I mean, I've heard people named that before, kind of like she's still being kind of like, so what do you think you're doing here? Like you've established that you're like travelers from another plane. So she still looks like, she doesn't look like annoyed or anything, but she's just kind of like, and?
Okay. Well, so we're a group of adventuring people, mission from our respective gods of light and nature and luck and all that sort of stuff to, stop a huge interplanar catastrophe. And I need to ask this person for some answers to some questions, so that would help me stop all worlds from being devoured or something. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but
what sort of disaster? And her like kind of like playful posture kind of looks a little bit more intent as she like puts this hammer that she'd kind of been like waving lightly in her hand like into like a loop on the side of the apron, and she kind of crosses her arms like,
So there, I don't know how widespread news is here, but not too long ago, I hope, we were actually involved in an incident with a really big vampiric tree creature of some sort that dredged itself a huge ditch for miles and miles and miles across these lands. And then we finally had to vanquish it in multiple planes of existence at the same time. And, because we wanted to stop the Shadowfell, I don't know what you call it here, but it's like the opposite of this place. A land of pure despair and misery, and a lot of really powerful undead things. We had to stop that from coming here and going to other places where it shouldn't belong. Basically, do you want me to go into a whole discussion about the different planes of existence and why they're sequestered the way that they are, and how, and why they should remain that way, or is that beyond the scope of what you're asking?
It would be interesting to find out if someone from your world knows nearly as much as you think you do about things like the planes, but I'm not who you need to speak to. If you're not going to cause any harm, I'm sure that no one here will bother you if you enter the city, but I think you're probably looking for someone in one of the spires.
One of the spires.
I think I heard something about that vampire tree at one point. It was ages ago, though.
Well, time is relative. On that note, actually, we were also in search of. We were also put in search of the Rose Court. Does that sound like a thing to you?
Make an inside check.
Well, that's so much better. 26.
Yeah, insight. When you say Rose Court, this person looks genuinely surprised. And after already kind of establishing that, like, oh, pat mortals kind of thing, you can tell that there is like a bit of like that astonished sort of like, can't believe they would know about something like that. Well, I mean, people travel here and there. I think you're best off inquiring in the spires. The courts aren't always physical, or at least you can't necessarily find somebody at them. They travel around. Where did you hear about that?
Around.
Well, good luck preventing the planes from collapsing on themselves.
Yes, I hope we succeed also. This conversation has been very helpful. You have been very illuminating, and it has been a pleasure speaking with you.
She does like a grandiose, overdramatic, deep bow, as if like, oh, yes. And just kind of like turns around and like rounds the side of her building, and after a few moments you'll start to hear the like sounds of metalwork like ensue again. Continue on.
Well, she seemed nice, Kale. What was all that about?
Yes.
Nice is relative. She was helpful, though. We need to go to the Spires, basically, is what we were told. The Rose Court would be there. Maybe. Whichever one's closest, probably. I didn't want to press for additional information because good luck getting it. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting here.
And once you get an Eladrin talking, they'll talk your ear off for a century.
It's kind of racist, but okay.
She was Eladrin, though, point of note.
Oh, well, then you're right. Sorry. yeah, good thing we stopped then, I guess, because we don't really have that kind of time. Or maybe we will once we talk to the Rose Court and they're able to, control time for us. Anyway, should we go towards? I think I see one.
I'm already walking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
Hale, do you know if everybody here only speaks whatever language you were just speaking, or was that a weird flex?
It's pretty likely that most residents of the Feywild speak Sylvan.
But do they also speak Common? Because it's called Common, you would think.
Well, it's common where we're from, right?
Well, is it not common here? Because I've been holding conversation with people that look like she did here. I'm just saying, you don't have to do this part alone. At least maybe we can find like some people that look like they're in uniforms or guard regalia or something that aesthetically points them out as someone who knows about the city and can tell us where to go a little more appropriately than a random blacksmith. That is what they were.
Okay. Sure. As we delve deeper into the city, feel free to approach anybody who looks like a guard and speak to them in common and see if that works out. I'm not being like facetious or sarcastic or anything.
No, it's cool. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're doing this the way that you want to also, but know that we're also available for use.
Right. That would be rude of me to have not introduced any of you and have you all just stand there and not say anything for a very long period of time. I will keep that in mind going forward.
That's right. You don't want us to use our names anyway, so introductions would be, lies, and we don't want to get off on that kind of footing, right?
They don't necessarily have to be lies. There's, we don't have to outright lie. Like say, these are my friends. This is Servant of Companion. This is.
I just want to be able to know what's happening and what you're talking about, so that if someone attempts to pull the wool over your eyes, one of us can stop it from happening. You isolate yourself like that from the pack. You make yourself vulnerable. That's all.
Fair enough.
Tesla's 45 feet down the road, just like waiting.
Hey,
for him,
wait,
like,
Tesla, hold on. I'll go catch up with Taslan.
Don't isolate yourself.
I'll go catch up with Taslan, and I'll say, yeah, I wouldn't do it. Okay, yeah, Taslan, because John's not here. So Taslan, wait, hold on. Nos brought up a good point. I could use another set of ears if we're talking to people, and you probably have most experience with other residents of the Feywild out of everybody here, because at the very least, your relationship with Raziel. So, two things. One, he'll reach into his pack and pull out some clay in the shape of like a pyramid, and he'll break a piece off and then rub it between his fingers and go reach out to Taslin's face and be like, "Can I just, real quick?"
If you must.
Boop. And cast the tongue spell on him.
Okay.
And second thing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you spoken to Raziel today?
She's in town, here, somewhere.
You don't know where?
Well, I didn't burn a spell slot yet. I told her, yes, when I was on watch, that we would be heading into the city today.
Okay, well, I've met her. I can, if you're uncomfortable expending the magical energy to contact her and ask her if she is, I'll do it.
I wanted to find a recognizable landmark before I sent her, so that, like a street sign or the name of an inn or something, so she knows exactly where we are. If I say, I'm in this very large, massive city, find me, I'm near a blacksmith, that really doesn't
Well, that
At the
would
point
help.
where I-
'cause- but no, I understand your point.
So
but yeah,
if
let's
we
do
are
that.
to get to one of the spires, we could simply say we're near this spire on this part of the city.
Great, awesome, incredible. Let's move and talk, and I'll whip out the carpets because they're faster than walking. And I'll be like, yeah, let's just go because I just realized I just made a mistake, and tongue only lasts for like an hour. So I want to make sure that if we talk to any more people, we get to them really quickly.
We should most likely huff and puff then.
Yeah,
And-
Huff and puff, I love it. So are you going to be like dashing on the carpets, like kind of winding through the city streets?
Yeah.
Okay. Nas, are you going to, if you see anybody looking official or guard-like, are you going to like yell at them as you guys all pass, or would you want to like stop everyone to try to interact with them?
I will make Kale aware
Okay.
of what's going on.
And Tazin will be looking out for two things. One for other Shatter Kai,
Okay.
as they're like zipping through, and for Raziel. So he's just kind of
Yeah, keeping an eye out.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
No,
I was like, is this like a, okay.
we gotta stop doing that to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm like, yes, you have my attention. Oh. So you get on the carpets and you all start to kind of like take off. And you do get a couple of like cross looks from, not cross like British cross angry, but cross like, what the hell? Kind of like looks from people as you're kind of like whizzing through. Everybody seems to be like, as they go about whatever business it is that they're doing, there's no rush to it. Everything looks very like meandering pace, so you're out of place by rushing. Probably a product of the sun never setting and these creatures living for thousands of years, whatever. So you are the only creatures moving about quickly. Now, as you do see, after you all travel in towards the center of the city, maybe about 200 feet in, you start to see sets of two. They're elven looking, walking about. There's no like crest like you would see in a human city where it's like this is the symbol of this city or the house that we represent or anything like that. There's no necessarily colors to it. It's just you start to see sets of individuals in what look like almost like matching armor sets, sort of, where it's this some of them are in lighter or maybe heavier armor, and they might have different weapons about them. And some of them don't have weapons at all. But what points them out usually is the sort of color scheme, this sort of like really, really muted earthen tones and gray, where you can tell that this is a deliberate choice. These aren't just like the clothes that people are wearing. These are deliberate choices, and they're also wearing armor, and not a lot of creatures here are. So you're able to start picking out sets of two, and they kind of look like they're passing through these like really like river snaky like streets that, while you can see down, aren't like straight lines. It's very like natural formed looking. And the streets are actually paved as well with this sort of like, it looks like highly polished or sanded, like a pale yellow stone, or yeah, it feels like stone as you're walking over it. And so you start to see these like sets of two, almost like they're kind of walking around on patrols.
I'll keep whacking him in the arm and be like, "There's some guards. There's some guards. There's some guards. There's some guards."
You're muted. Oh, and make a perception check, Taslin,
Okay.
okay.
since you're looking for someone specific.
An 18, but I will use my inspiration that fool gave us because I love him.
Okay. What was it that you said, Kale?
Oh, me.
Response to Nas, yeah.
You would have shouted out to Tazlin like, "Hey, they look like people that can direct us to any great landmarks that Raziel might know about."
Oh, that's wonderful.
I love
You wanna hit her up, maybe?
Oh, yes, of course. What are some of the nearby landmarks?
Is this your sending spell?
Well, I'm gonna send it, but I want to know what to say first.
Wait, I'm confused. Are you asking the guard, or are you sending Raziel right now?
Oh,
'Cause
I was
we're
gonna
talking
send
about-
Raziel, but
Okay, and you're asking.
what landmarks are around me right now?
Oh,
physically.
No, okay.
So
Okay.
that I know what to say with the 25 words I'm given, yeah.
Gotcha. Are you all going to stop for a moment while you do this so that the location that you give isn't like useless in 2 seconds? Okay.
Well, the point of getting the guards and talking to them was so that they could do what you wanted and point us out to a tavern or a tap room or something. So
That's fair.
Step 1, go talk to guards. Step 2, figure out where we're going to be. Step 3, send Raziel.
I'm glad you told me that before I cast my spell. Good morning?
So there's these two, this pair of Eladrin-looking elves. Since you were looking, Tazlin, as you've all made your way several hundred feet into the city, you've noticed that most everyone you've seen have been Eladrin. This seems to be largely an Eladrin city. You have seen a few different looks about, off in the distance, but most everyone that you're encountering up close looks to be very Eladrin. You haven't noticed any Shatterkai, and I assume you'll keep your eye out, and so you can keep that roll as we continue moving in. When you see these two, they look like this is the Feywild equivalent of a light armor. There's no heavy metals or anything on it. It's almost hard to even tell that it's armor. It almost looks like really finely crafted coats in a way. But as they're moving, you can tell that what looks like a sleeve is several layered plates of something as they move, and when they move you can see the sort of lines that tells you, oh, this looks more protective than just clothing. And as you kind of hail them, what was it you said specifically?
Good morning?
That's what it was, right. So they both stop and turn and look at you all and kind of pause for a moment as they take in this scene. And oh, nice. One of them, when you do that, Nas, one of them kind of nods their head back, and there's a young they have blondish looking hair, hard to discern much about them based on their features, just really fine looking features, elven obviously. And when you say good morning, they kind of look at you curiously.
Oh, now that I have your attention, wonderful, that's fantastic. See, I was wondering if you could assist me in locating a tavern or a place to get a drink that I could arrange a meeting with someone who's in the city that needs to find me.
Well, you look like you're not from around here, all of you.
Well, that's fair.
If you're not very familiar with the city at all, it's hard to tell you which one you might want to visit, but here we don't quarantine anyone with any sort of business dealings to a specific region. So if you travel a little bit further down this way, you'll see a large, taller than the rest, home, I think would be the best way to describe it to you, with bluish windows that are sort of different than everything else, I suppose, in this area. And there's the opportunity for a drink there. We all take on professions over the years, and if someone decides to pursue employment, a business, they're stopping and trying to pick their words carefully to describe something to you, then they usually just operate out of their homes. But you can tell because those are larger.
Of course. And are there any named landmarks in the city?
Well,
I'm certain there are quite a few, but I mean one that I could name that someone would know where to find it.
The Spires.
And
Or-
there's several of them. Do they each have their own individual name, or are they just collectively known as the Spires?
The Spires.
Perfect. And there's how many of them?
7.
7 Spires. And another question, that I noticed a stone sort of citadel or fortress. Is that new?
It's the oldest part of the city. That was the city for however long.
And is it still occupied currently, or has it been largely abandoned?
Just where matters of governance are held.
Huh. Perfect. Well, I will look to Kale because I'll be like, my patience is run thin.
And Kale will have at the start of this start translating the Sylvan parts of this conversation, so other people can participate, maybe
Okay.
if they want.
Appreciate that, and I would like to ask the guards if all the spires serve the same function.
Do you translate that back to them?
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
Kale?
yeah.
Or,
Kale
okay.
Would be the babblefish here.
Well, that's where. What business is it that you have here?
We were told to come here seeking. He basically goes through the whole rigmarole, like the same exact stuff he told the lady before.
Okay. They kind of like. The other one has been like talking to them quietly, and you're too far away to hear what like the two of them are saying to each other as they kind of like speak back and forth. And then the one that's been mostly engaging switches to common, but it takes them like a little bit more thought. Like if you've learned a language but you haven't used it in 100 or 200 years or something, and you're like words. They say, if you have questions about the Spires or the Citadel, you best ask there for answers.
Okay.
How about we simply arrange a meeting at the Citadel? That seems like a very non-moving landmark.
Who are you saying that to?
To the group,
Okay.
Not to the guards.
not to the guards.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not moving anywhere anytime soon. Apparently,
Allegedly.
supposedly, yeah, sounds good to me.
Possibly.
Also, Kale would like to ask. He'll turn to the guards and ask them: Are there are there rules or laws here? Period? Question mark.
Yes. It's a really ambiguous question. Use good judgment. Do you have a question about a specific... Are you asking how to act in the town? I know you're not from around here. It's really obvious.
No, I was just what's the most grievous crime one could commit here? I just want to make sure we don't accidentally do it.
Attempting to control someone's will or body?
Okay. Magically or just in any way? Because there's a lot of leeway there, and I've dealt with where I'm from. There's judges and courts and lawyers that can twist and turn the wording of certain things. But you said to just use good judgment, so I feel like that's it'll be fine as long as it's more of an intent-based type thing. But we've spent a lot of time in the Feywild relative to most of the people where we're from, and it seems like that's kind of a hallmark of this whole plane of existence is kind of manipulating people.
There's a difference between entering into an arrangement with a creature and reaching out and controlling them through magical or innate abilities.
Okay. But what about mundane ways? Because I've seen people and I've heard people weave perfectly non-magical words in such a way as to also control the way other people will act. And
your business dealings are your own business.
So what? Okay, all right. Not that. I appreciate your response, and I have no further questions about laws here.
You're having this conversation as you're kind of like trailing into the end of that sentence. You see that there's a portion of the ground that starts to glow very slightly, almost as if like tracing an outline, and you can see these sort of like not flowery but like flowing symbols start to light up and move away from where these two guards in particular are standing, and they look down at their arm and then look down at the symbols, and they look back at you and like wave slightly, and they take off, moving quickly, following the path that this light is kind of forging ahead of them.
Should we follow you, or what's happening right now?
There's no answer.
Okay.
Well, that was an enlightening conversation.
Where are they running toward?
It seems to be kind of like back the direction you came, essentially.
Okay. I don't know what to do right now. I kind of want to just go where we were going.
I'm sure they can handle it.
Okay.
So they did point out to Taslin earlier that if you wanted about like, I don't think they specified exactly how far, but if you continue traveling down the road that you are, you'll come across one of the sort of like tree buildings that's a little bit taller, and the window glass or something will be have like a bluish hue to it, and that would be a place that you could like stop and have a drink if you wanted, if that was your goal, because that was what you asked about.
Yeah. And when Taslin heard that, Taslin was like, this isn't going to work. Okay. I don't think Taslin would have even tried to like hide it. Like, Taslin's displeasure is probably worn right on his face. Like, he wanted a name of a place in 15 seconds and the direction. How about we go to the Citadel? That seems like it's at the center of the city.
Great. Perfect. We will do that.
Any complaints? I'm definitely not the tactical genius of the group.
Well, this ain't combat.
Social maneuvering can be like combat in a way.
It's a little bit more threatening than combat usually.
Do you want me to take charge? I will bust the city wide open and get where you're going for sure. But this isn't my thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for that exactly. We can just follow this road. It goes right to the Citadel.
Wise decision.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I will send Raziel in Mithrendain, headed to the Citadel at the center of the city. The stone building with vines, you know? It's like apostrophe, though, so it's like one word.
Why apostrophe? No.
Yeah. See you soon.
Question mark.
Taslin. Ooh, I have 2 more words.
Loves you.
Ooh, I could do that. Or hugs, kisses.
XOXO. You finish casting your spell and you kind of like send it away and you can feel it leave. And a few moments passes and you don't get a response. You're muted.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what I wanted to say. It's just a very long Taslin will turn to Kale and he'll go, well, there was no response?
Is that unusual for her and you?
Typically?
All right. Do you have anything? We'll start heading that way anyway. But on the way, since I can just sit on a carpet and the carpet will do the moving around for me. Do you have anything of hers on your person, like any of her belongings?
I think she gave me something when we last left the Feywild. What did she give me? I don't remember. I didn't mark it down in my book.
Is he allowed to make something up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no, it was a thing of hair, like a ring of hair. That's what it was. Boom. I remembered.
It was a what?
Like, in medieval times, they made hair, like rings out of hair for, like, significant others. So it was like a band of hair.
Ah.
Which they also do in Lord of the Rings with, like, Galadriel. When she gives hair to
Okay.
Gimli.
That's fair.
Settle down.
I mean, I guess if I got Galadriel's hair, I'd probably do something special with it too, or maybe just keep it. But I also would be like, weird, you gave me hair. That's kind of all right.
Could have asked for anything.
Yeah.
Instead, I got this.
3 hairs from her golden head.
Cool. So hair, perfect. That's specifically mentioned in the scrying spell that I was about to cast. So, and just to be clear, you can't do this, right?
No.
What? Wait, was Kale? Was I there? I wasn't here that day, but when we looted the dragon hoard and somebody had there's a scrying orb involved.
Yeah, it's currently in Lafcadia's possession.
You cast Identify on that. It was just a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Wasn't sure
It was a really nice crystal ball that had it's like an arcane focus. That's
like you could
somebody...
use it to cast the scrying spell.
As a component.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. Because that's exactly what I have, and I'll pull it out.
Yeah.
And then I'll just put the hair on the ball and just rub it on there and see if it shows me an image of Raziel. Yeah.
It takes 10 minutes to cast, or 1 minute to cast scrying, or is it an hour?
I think it's 10 minutes actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're all still kind of speeding through towards the middle as this is going on then?
Would speeding get us there before the 10 minutes are up?
No.
Okay,
It's still
then,
off in the distance. Okay.
Then, yeah, screw it.
So you sit down, you take the time to cast your spell. What is everybody else doing during these 10 minutes? Really quick.
Casting water breathing on everybody.
Okay. If you're not doing anything special, that's fine. I just want to make sure that... Okay. So you're sitting tight for 10 minutes while Kale is casting this. Taslin, will you put the water breathing spell into Roll20 for me so I can take a look at it?
Yeah.
Okay. You finish casting your spell, and Kale, and you feel your presence being, your awareness, your consciousness being kind of lifted away from you, and there's that thread feeling that you always get of the tether to your physical corporeal body, and you start to lift and be pulled out of yourself, and there's no feeling of direction. And the spell subsides. Now you know that this is really uncommon. This is a spell you're really familiar with. And there are a couple of reasons why this might happen. With scrying, are you able to tell if someone succeeds in their save? Wow, the breathing works just fine, by the way.
Would we? I remember you said that there was that magical orb when we enter the city. Would it? Tazlin would probably think: is there something preventing certain divination magics or the like to target individuals due to some preventative measure in the city?
What would this be? Either like history or investigation, I think, would be to couple with the earlier like Arcana check, because you're able to like sense a lot about the magical essence of it already, but to determine like the purpose of it would take some like thinking, basically.
24 investigation.
Okay, so you've got at least 10 minutes to ponder this while this is going on, and you're thinking about these orbs, and you did feel like there was almost like this weighted presence to it. Like you're all still feeling this hum and sort of like low level vibration has not left at any point once you started to feel it. It hasn't gotten necessarily any stronger as you've traveled towards the center of the city, but it is like ever present. So it's on your mind. You're thinking about it, Tazlin, and you don't know whether you read it somewhere or this is really just like a deduction that you've made, but you're thinking about it, and a suppression field seems like these are the sort of traits that something like that might have. Whether it impacts all magics or not, or only specific kinds, is a little hard to say. But in the Feywild especially, every Eladrin that you've passed on the way here might be 700 years old and an incredibly powerful caster and could have warded their own homes. So it's safe to say that if this is a dampening field that impacts things, that could be contributing to individual spells failing or repeated types of spells failing. But also, at the very least, any individual home, much less these like grand spires of these citadels or an important sort of building, could be prevented from divination magic, from like teleportation magic. There could be wards up around the whole city, for all you all know, to prevent things like this from happening. So it's very possible, especially in a city in the Feywild, where magic abounds, kind of thing.
Well, I'm fairly certain that the city is warded against certain types of magic. Probably why my sending spell failed. But on the bright side, when I spoke to her last, I told her we were going to the Court of Roses? I've already forgotten. Roses.
Rose Court, yeah.
The Rose Court. And so at the very least, she knows the general gist of where we're headed. She's a smart girl. She'll find us if she wants to track us down. I have no doubt about that. Also, Kayla, you're muted.
Here's your hair back.
Oh, thank you. I'll put it back in my bag.
Yeah. Yeah, I got nothing. So we'll just have to do things old-fashioned way. We'll fly up. If we can't find her, I could just fly up into the air above the city and just scream as loud as I can.
You could do a thaumaturgy.
Maybe. I was going to test that out. Actually, let me test the thaumaturgy real quick.
So you're going to fly up over the tops of the relative buildings and actually, like, you just yell for Azul? No? Okay.
Not right now.
Okay.
That's plan D.
Okay.
Yeah. Do like the Rocky Azul.
So I'm on the carpet with Nos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try and do thaumaturgy, and like he's gonna close his eyes and try and make his eyes change the appearance of him to look like, I don't know, like mirrors. And then he'll turn to Nos and be like, "Do my eyes look different?"
Yes. Why?
Did it? It worked?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because magic. couldn't do my scrying spell, it didn't work, and his sending spell didn't work, so I'm just testing things out, see what does and does not work. Light seemed to work, the Drift Glow barely worked, Thaumaturgy worked, Tongues worked. So I was kind of thinking that maybe spells that affected other people directly wouldn't work, but Tongues worked fine. Maybe it's only certain spells that affected people directly, or...
Could also be the height that we're at. It's a lot of variables.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about we start by, once again, finding the person that we need to ask about these things, which is down there.
Yeah, no, I was just asking about this while we're on the carpet. I imagined we were still kind of like going through the streets and out of character.
Yeah, I assumed you were continuing to travel since like you didn't need to stop to cast a spell or anything.
Yeah,
But it's a big city, and you still have to kind of like cut through some different roads and stuff. So it takes some time to like get through. Even at a dash, like you're still running through a city essentially. You just don't actually physically be doing the running. So just you can see the tops of these huge spires in the distance. They're obviously getting closer. There's no like thing where they like stay as far away as they look initially or anything like that going on. But it's going to be like several more minutes before you make it there, even kind of like at a mad dash. So you can just kind of like cut to that if there's nothing else that you want to try, or if you want to have any like conversations or do anything else along the way.
I'm good. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm good.
You spend the next several minutes pondering what the hell's going on with spells, and I think this is a good time to take our break.
Woo.
Before we head off on break, I will just reiterate that next week we will not be playing this game, nor will we be playing the week after, but there will be a game. Graham will be doing a one-shot. Sounds very exciting for lovers of bards and or puns. That effort will be part of a larger effort of 24 hours of D&D on this channel for raising money for Extra Life. The channel is specifically raising money for the Dell Children's Medical Center in Austin. It's a great cause, and if you tune in to the one-shots, you might have a chance of winning a legendary bundle from D&D Beyond. So tune in, and I'll put a link in chat. And we will see you after the break. Live.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you all for joining us for another session of Half-Rate Heroes. We left off where everybody was kind of speeding towards the Citadel and the spires and stuff in the center. So there's a handout that you should be able to access now, just called Mithrendain. We're just on the sort of like landing page there in Roll20, but if you click on that, you should be able to see this is generally what these spires look like as you head towards this area and get closer. So very sort of like ornate but natural looking, really interesting blend of like elven architecture and the beauty of nature sort of thing. And as you're heading towards the center, when you get about, I want to say like 200-ish feet away, so you're like well within like visual range, so you can sort of start to see these. They are interspersed. There are a couple of clumps of these spires. There's like two grandiose spires that are really close to each other, and one that's slightly far away, and the others are kind of like interspersed around the citadel. They're not like they don't look intentionally planned from like a city planning perspective. So there are like two that are kind of closer together that are nearest where you are approaching from the direction that you came. And you see more of those individuals clad in that like muted earthen tone, armory looking sort of garb. You see more of them, and they're in sets of 3 around here. And as you're kind of making this beeline, you see several of these like sets as they're like walking through cross streets and down this sort of like main thoroughfare that you're on, stop to take notice of you and watch as you're approaching.
Let's slow down.
You don't have to. Just see how you react. You gonna slow down? Okay.
Yeah. Don't want a speeding ticket.
That's fair. That's a fair point. So how are you going to... So you see these several spires. Some are further away in the distance. There's these set of 2 that are... in the image you're looking at, the 2 on the right are about that close to each other, but this is like a perspective sort of thing. So there's still like a good amount of space between them, and they are quite large themselves. But they're still kind of like set further back from you. So it doesn't look like anyone's necessarily like reacting to you immediately, but it was very obvious that they took notice of your presence. Are you going to stop completely, or are you just like slowing down to pass through at a more leisurely pace?
The last thing.
Okay. So you bring the carpets down to like a normal speed from the kind of like rush that you had been in previously. And as you kind of, so these sort of house-looking trees, which kind of like equal in beauty to these, although the architecture is a little bit more natural looking. There's not this like columns and grand windows and anything like that, but they are like reclaimed by nature. They all have this sort of like similar feel to them. And there are some larger ones here, and you can, as you're passing through, you do see into some that look like tap rooms, and some that look like they might be restaurants, and some others just look like general shops where you see like assortments of things on shelves that you can't quite make out as you're kind of like speeding past. And those kind of fade away, and there's this distance of maybe like 70 feet or so of this solid yellow paved stone where there are several, they're like water fountains, but the colors inside are this sort of like milky pink, and this liquid is flowing out over the top, and there is like hanging baskets of these draping leaves, and this looks like some sort of like not a courtyard, but buildings have ended, and there is a space between before the spire area kind of begins. And as you approach the boundary, you see 2 of the sets of 3 kind of move over in like an interceptory sort of path, and kind of stand and wait to see how you react. They're just watching you.
We speed up. We make ramming speed, and we ram as hard as we stop. I would like to stop and just...
Yeah, I think stopping's our best bet.
Okay. How far away from them would you like to stop?
40 feet.
Okay. So you we're going pretty quickly, and you kind of slow down, and as you see them sort of come to this interceptory path. Is that a word? Interceptory? Whatever.
Yeah.
You slow down to a stop about 40 feet away from them. I want Nas and Lefcadio to make a perception check for me. And there's a reason why I'm asking the 2 of them, which you might find out depending upon how well you roll.
17.
21.
Okay. So, earlier, when Kale was having a conversation with Aladdin on the outside, you both sort of subconsciously picked up on something that didn't really register until just now. But of the 6 entities standing in front of you, none of them look like her necessarily, but when she laughed at one point, you saw that her tongue had this bluish hue to it, and it wasn't even something that was necessarily perceptible until you see these 6 standing in front of you now, and the 4th from the left, they're like picking their teeth or almost something, like, but that's not what they're doing. They've got this sort of like look on their face, and you notice that next to the rest of them, that is unusual, or is like a mark, and it's not necessarily to say that like there isn't like the same person. It's more like there is something that you drew as a distinction that you wouldn't have noticed until you saw several of them next to each other. And this like realization is coming to you as you all kind of come to a stop, and that one is standing there. They've got a spear in one hand, and it's like resting on the ground, and they have their hand on it. They're not like pointing at you or anything. And they have a shield over their other arm, and they're just kind of like in the line waiting to see what you're all doing. So how do you all...
So is this like a situation where one of these things is not like the other, one of these things just doesn't belong? Okay. Then well before we approach from our 40-foot position or whatever, I'm going to do the thing where I stop Tazlin, and then I get shoulder to shoulder with him again and say the one on the, was it far left, is not right.
The one on the far. How so?
Mouth is weird. I don't know.
Look at
Mannerisms
the
off.
What'd you say?
I'm gonna go look at his mouth, or I mean, from where I'm looking, I'm gonna like give a cursory glance at his mouth.
Okay, once it's been pointed out to you, it's easy enough to notice. But it is something that's like it's not overt. It's not like they have a bright blue tongue or anything like that. But it's just the tone of it has more of that bluish purple tint to it, and you can tell next to the rest of them that it's just like different color, but it's the same sort of different color.
Okay. Taslin probably would not be familiar with any stories about blue tongues, so I'm not even gonna roll.
Well, is it an illusion?
I don't know.
Look with your eyes. Look with your Shadar Kai eyes.
What do your Shadar Kai eyes see? I will. I guess I'll kind of give them an up and down and kind of see any information I can garner.
Yeah, investigation check. Mm-hmm.
That's a 20.
20. You're giving them like the once over while also not trying to not look like you're staring or anything like that, and you're looking to see if it's an illusion and what other information you can kind of glean by their appearance. You take a second to examine it, and you're pretty confident that you don't see an illusion here. Normally, with illusions, what's your wizard branch?
Necromancy.
Yeah. With illusions, just being a wizard, though, you know that in general, illusions, when looked at with a discerning eye, can generally be pinpointed with someone who has enough information to know what to look for, that sort of thing, like successful DC, whatever. So you look at it, you examine it, you don't see any of the traits that you would normally see when you're recognizing an illusion that is clarified to be false. Like, it doesn't fade from your view, it doesn't have any kind of like shimmer to it, there's no like it taking up space that it doesn't belong, like there's no like change in that you can see that makes it look like an illusion. It looks like they just have kind of a bluish tongue. It's kind of a little weird.
Well, they're not an illusion. That's the good news, or perhaps the not good news. They could be a shapeshifter. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any monsters that have blue tongues and can also shapeshift. Just keep an eye out, and I will too. I think that's our best bet, and maybe not mention the tongue.
Well, I was going to suggest the opposite. Ask the others if they are aware of the situation, and just be like, is that normal? And if it is, okay, cool. We accept you for who you are. No big deal.
That's fair. That's fair. Hello there! Step off the rug onto the cobblestone.
Okay. The effects of the spell should still be active. So what language do you say it in? It doesn't necessarily matter, but...
Well, I guess Elvish, and then with...
So you say it, and because of the effects of the spell, anyone around you should be able to understand you, and you can understand anything anyone says. So you say hello. And the third from the left, who they have two short swords, really finely looking made, kind of like curved at the end as short swords. Really, like you can tell even from how far away you are, like how finely crafted they are. And there's this like glint to them almost, that if there were a sun in the sky would be reflecting off of them. But since they're in perpetual twilight, this is clearly some sort of like palpable magic to them. They take a step forward, say, "What is your business here, traveler?" Travelers?
I'm going to be over Taslin's shoulder, and I'm going to be staring straight at the one on the far left, but like at an intensity in which I'm almost staring through him.
So you're making it very deliberate that you're looking at this one, and if they, so you're not making an attempt to hide it from them that you're looking at them, essentially?
No, but
okay.
It's also not necessarily threatening. It's more
Yeah.
just staring.
Yeah. Okay.
We are travelers from, well, they are travelers from the material plane. I myself am not. We are.
Where are you from?
The Shadowfell.
Continue.
And we are. I look to Kale, seeking two individuals who we believe may be residing within the city. Unfortunately, our sending for our friends did not go through. I suspect due to the wards within the city. We were going to meet them, and they knew we were coming, but we are unfamiliar with Mithrendain and did not know of any landmarks to meet them at, and we had not suggested prior. We were advised by some of the guard that going to the, are they the pillars? Is that what they're called? No, the spires.
Spires.
The spires would be our best bet to get that information and to locate these people.
Are these people of importance? Obviously they're important to you, but seeking information of missing companions from the sages of the city is...
That's a very broad question because they're important to us, and I believe we are of some importance on our quest that they may or may not, that remains to be seen, whether they can assist us with. Kale, you can step in. You know more information about one of them than I do. But one of the people we seek is the Spring Dawning. That is her title, I suppose. Perhaps you're familiar. Perhaps not.
Would you, Graham, say that Raziel is... I know she was offered like an important role in her like home place, but do you think that she would be somebody that would be of note in a city like this? I'm not saying she's not. Do you think, is this Taslin trying to like make her sound more important than she is, or do you think that this is somebody who would have been noticed by...
I think... Yeah, I'd say it's like 50-50 because she's,
okay.
I always assume, is like an adventurer of close to Taslin's skill because they traveled together for centuries. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I don't know who knows who in the Feywild, and she was probably adventuring far before he met her.
Yeah. So there's ample opportunity for her to have made a name for herself, whether or not it traveled to this individual or this group's ears or not. Okay.
Yeah.
As you were talking, one of the leftmost, so they've all got these sort of like, not necessarily helmets, but there's almost like cloaks on that also have some sort of like protective aspect to them. So a little bit of their features are disguised in a way, like they're just like shielded. So you can see fine elven features. You can see that the one on the far left has this long sort of like golden hair, and there's several braids in the side where it looks like it's kind of like pulled out of the way. You see that the three to the right of them have this sort of dark brown chestnutty hair, and then the two on the far end, one of them has more of like an auburn colored hair, and the one on the far right has it's like jet black hair, but you can only barely see that poking out the ends of the collar, and they have this sort of like uniform looking sort of garb on. So it's like a little bit difficult, other than hair colors, to discern much about their features, since they're fine and like similar in like elven nature. There's not a whole lot that sticks out other than the sort of blue tongue that you've seen. The one on the far left, the one with the goldenish hair, at one point during your conversation, it turns and leaves in a quick fashion. I want the only person who's not actively involved in this conversation or in studying something is Lefcadio. So I want you to make a perception check for me really quick. because you would easily be able to notice that this person walked away. But
19.
What you see is similar to earlier when in the middle of the conversation, the two guards that you're speaking to saw this sort of glowing marks light up and create like a trail on the ground that they followed. The ground, probably about 15 feet or so to the right of on your left, but the rightmost person in this line, starts to light up, and they immediately break away and begin to follow that path, and it's leading back towards the centrals, like towards the general direction of like the Citadel and the Spires, as opposed to the other one who had led kind of like away from out of the city earlier. So when you finish saying this, Taslin, that one kind of ponders for a moment, and they look to each other, and they're starting to have this conversation. And Nas, you're studying the one with the different colored tongue very intently, and you notice that in general they're not. The air that they have is not nearly as serious as the rest of them. It's kind of hard to tell with Fae in general what serious really means. But the other four seem to be kind of like focused on the conversation, and they're actively listening when the one that was engaging Taslin like breaks eye contact to turn to the rest of them and kind of make that like, do you know who he's talking about look on their face. That one is just kind of standing there. They still got their spear in one hand and they've got their like shield over their arm. But they're watching you all with this like curiosity more than being engaged in the conversation. And they turn to each other and kind of quietly exchange words. If you're further back than the 40 feet away you'd initially thought, then I don't think any of you would be able to hear unless you had particularly high passive perception.
Like Wampum's level high of perception? Because I think he has the highest perception of everybody.
Yeah, but he can't understand what they're saying.
That's true.
So he can hear voices that the rest of you aren't going to be able to hear, but he doesn't know what they're getting at. So they have a few brief exchanges really quickly, and the one on the far right that had the really dark black hair, they're standing. Yeah, you're far right. They're standing next to the one with the blue tongue on their left. And they step forward and they say, I've heard of one with such a title, but they are typically far from here.
Indeed, they typically are. However, as of, I believe, yesterday in the Feywild, they were near the city.
I'm sorry, hold on. Do y'all need help with something? Is something going on that we need to help you with? And is that normal?
You're gesturing at the mouth.
Is that okay? Is that all right?
The other four look at the one that you're gesturing at, like confused for a moment, and they see what you're pointing to, and they all take a step back. And it's not aggressive. It's almost more, if you realize somebody important was standing next to you and you didn't know it until just now, they almost look like, oh shit, but not like weapons drawn, like to battle, oh shit. It's more like one of them kind of like bows their head slightly, and the rest of them kind of stand there, not like awkwardly necessarily, but they disperse a little bit and stand like waiting to see how the other one reacts.
Oh, okay, seems normal, sorry.
And the one that you had pointed out, basically, they like put their spear away and they cross their arms behind them, and they are like observant.
Paranoid.
That's a good attitude to have in a place like this. And they look over at the one that was standing to their left, and they're like, I planned this for a long time. And you don't really necessarily like understand. They're speaking in common, which is unusual based on what you've experienced so far. And it seems like the rest of them all seem to understand what this one is saying. So you can all surmise that going forward, you could probably speak common and everything will be a-okay for the most part, at least. And they kind of take a step forward. And if somebody who definitely felt self-important was walking through a room of people that they definitely felt were their lessers, the sort of like swagger that comes with that, they take like 2 or 3 steps forward and they're like, and what help could you possibly be in a place like this?
I suppose that is up to you, my lord?
What are you looking for these people for? I have no way of knowing whether or not you're familiar with this person.
At this point, I'm going to turn to Kale and kind of gesture like, is this something that you want to assume control over now? Or
Sure. Yeah. Well, the person that he was talking about is just pointing to Tazlin. I don't know that Kale's ever heard him refer to Raziel that way. But Kale will just probably make the assumption like he's talking about a longtime friend of his that he had spoken to earlier and was ready to meet here. And she was going to help us with our divinely ordained mission to keep the planes from, collapsing in on each other and keep Shar from devouring everything, everywhere, and all the divinity and all that stuff. Are there any shrines, any gods around here? They've been acting strange. People have been acting strange around them. Anything like that?
If they were, I probably wouldn't tell you, at least not right now.
Well, that's the sort of thing we would be able to help you with, because that's what we've been doing, not just over in the material plane, but in all sorts of different planes across, the realm space, or whatever you call it here.
Well, I have to say that mini-magics don't work in the city. Although if you sent a little message to someone, they should have gotten it. Other things might not. It depends on what you're trying to do. But there's usually a way around things if you know where to look. Who is it that you're looking for?
I'm looking for a more mundane, I assume, elven woman from the material plane named Serial. And I believe she has the answer to some questions that are key to our continued success on our divinely ordained mission.
Seems awfully mundane, as you said. Everyone make an insight check.
9.
13.
17.
can I use a viewer inspiration post roll?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna do that.
Okay. Do you want to take the 16 or you want to roll again?
I was gonna roll again. It was a 9 and a 9.
Oh, no.
Or 7 and a 9.
It got a little better.
Oh well.
Creatures like this are incredibly hard to read. This one, the intent to cause mischief is so palpable. They're obviously playing with you as if, not in a cruel necessarily way, or at least they're not bearing facial expressions that you can see that give them, now part of their face is hidden, of course, that give them this like, I'm playing with my meal before I eat it, like sense to it. Kayla, you can pick up on this being like a game to them. Whoever this is, they're enjoying this conversation because they are enjoying like poking at you all, but they don't seem to be in any way convinced that you're capable of helping, that these people that you're looking for, you deserve to know who they are if they know where they're at. Like, they still don't consider this conversation to be anything more than like a game, it kind of seems like, based on the sort of like the body posture that they have and the like smirk in the corner of their mouth and the way that their tongue like kind of like flit when they laughed at one point. And as you're kind of like taking in the information the words that they said and like kind of like examining their features, they do pull the cloak back and like take off what it looks like a mask with like a strong sheen to it, similar to the sword that one of the others carries. You think there's probably some magic to this, and they take off this mask and you see this like beautiful elven looking creature, very long pointed ears, exaggeratedly beautiful features, large like bright golden eyes that like bore almost through you when you're able to make like direct eye contact with them for the first time. Just really like an intense gaze, and they kind of shake out their hair and stand there in front of you, being this kind of like glamorous, imposing fey figure. And it's pretty clear to all of you, being as traveled and as experienced as you are, that this is probably some kind of archfey.
I make an audible ooh.
And they kind of laugh back at you, like, I expect this. And so you want to help?
If there's something that you need help with, of course.
Do you know anything about the purpose of this city?
Nope.
Mortals. And they kind of like look at the other guards around them and they're like, return to your whatever it is you do. And the rest of them kind of like form their ranks, and there's one that takes off. The path that you had seen earlier, Lefcadio, that had lit up is kind of like fading in the same sort of like trail that it had lit up in. And the one of them takes off in that direction, presumably because they were like, they were in that group before with that person, and the other three kind of split off and follow the path that they had originally been taking before they all took notice of you and kind of like shored up ranks, sort of thing. And you're left standing in front of this individual, and they say, perhaps it's time we visited a friend of mine, and maybe we'll see if you can be any help. And they turn and they start to walk away towards one of the spires, actually. Literally taking no mind of you. The minute they turn away, they're just walking of their own accord and expecting you to follow.
I'll follow.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So they walk across the rest of this expanse, and there are these like circles of these fountains around, and there's several interesting looking fauna just in general in the area. It looks like at this point, while there's still definite sections that are natural and foresty, there are like cultivated portions too, where you can tell that this paved stone has been intentionally like ceased for like a stretch where they planted and cultivated these like gorgeous flowers that have like lights dancing around some of them, and there's this like intense smell that some of them have that's really sweet. And you're kind of passing through what looks like a fey garden that has been planted in the middle of this forest almost. And they stop probably about 40 feet, 30 feet away from the entrance of one of them. And there are several of these sort of like patrol-esque types that initially started to stop and approach whoever it was that was heading up towards this. And when this creature like just gave them a look, you're all behind them, so you can't necessarily see what it is that they're doing, but they'll just like turn their heads, and then those individuals just like turn around and walk back the direction that they came. And there's these grand doors in front of you. You can see in the handout that they have that sort of like arched but then pointed at the top, and you can see that they're double doors, and they've got these large windows in the top. And they stop and they kind of turn back around to you when they're out front, and they're like, so tell me really, who is it here that you plan to meet? All of you, the two of you, whoever it is that these people are important to. These creatures, these individuals.
Did I not say before?
I don't believe we gave their names, or perhaps you gave her name. The one you're looking for.
Yes, so do you
But what are they to you? Oh, are you saying this out loud, or is this like a quiet conversation?
Quiet conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm certain an Archfey can probably hear anything we say within the city itself.
I mean, maybe. But the choice to be polite could still be an option, even if they could hear you.
Yeah.
So do you want to go first? 'Cause I feel like he's got less, or they have less information about your person than mine at this point. They want to, I don't know.
I suppose what's the... Well, I mean, I probably shouldn't say that, but... so I'll stop that thought right where it was.
Yeah.
Okay, I suppose I will tell you more about the nature of the person we're looking for, or I'm looking for. 2 gardens separated, one in shadow, left abandoned, the other in vibrant forest, warm and grown. Meet by fate, transplanted in mud, and now converged garden once more.
That was lovely. So they're important to you.
Yes,
Why?
because I love them.
How interesting. And what is it you're looking for? And they look at you, Lafcadio. What are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just here with my mates. You know, we're off trying to save the world and all that. And we're here getting some important information, I reckon.
Saving the world. I'm sure. But what is it that you want here? Do you need these people?
These people or the people we're looking for?
You've traveled a long way. This is a dangerous place for one such as yourself.
Me personally?
Mortals.
Oh.
Mundane types. Not to be rude. But
Well, there's danger all around the corner, everywhere we go. I mean, this isn't our first plane outside the material plane that we've been to. So we're accustomed to a life of danger. And these are my mates.
planeswalkers.
I'm gonna help them out when they need help.
Ah, so you're helpful. And what about you? And they look at you, Nas.
What? What?
Are you in love with these people? Are you here to help your friends?
I'm
Are
in
you
love
just
with
along
these
for the
people,
ride?
yes, and I indicate my whole group.
Me girl.
Yeah, him too. Yeah, no, they say do a thing, I do it. Simple.
Are they your masters?
No, Timora is my master.
Well, Timora's lovely.
Thank you. I will let her know you said so.
Oh, I'm sure she's aware.
I don't know. It depends on the force fields. I don't know.
Why don't you go ahead and... For Nas, I don't know whether this would be like history or religion. Pick whichever one you think would be better. Make a check for me really quick.
Okay. They're the same.
Okay. Doesn't matter then. Roll me some dice.
I got a 4.
4. Okay. And it's hard to say why they might have said that. This is a fey creature. Maybe they like chants or something. Maybe they just like Timora. Maybe they're devout. An archfey devout to a god. That would be interesting.
Well, I mean, who doesn't like Timora? Seriously.
Well, I can think of at least one.
Oh, yes.
Well, no one likes her.
Probably thinking, yeah. We're probably all thinking of the same one.
Any hoodly doodle. Yeah, I'm just here to protect them.
And you. And they look at you, Kale. Because you like gave the person's name. You know. But they're like, are you in love with this person you're looking for? These people you're looking for?
No.
You're so mysterious. Single word answers. Why did you come all this way to find these people? They're going to help you save the world?
Yes. I
like you.
Thank you. I've lived a life of with a shroud hanging over my head.
Oh, of course.
The whole time, and I had grown comfortable with it, and I had learned to live with it just fine. But I think if I'm going to fulfill the destiny, I guess, laid out for me by Denier, the scribe of Agma, that I need to have that shroud lifted before the deed is done. And this person, I think, is the only one uniquely qualified to lift it.
They're listening to you, and this like sort of like playful demeanor they have kind of fades a bit, and they lean against. There's this in the image there was like a fence almost on the side of one, but it's kind of more of like a railing along like a stairway or a path, and they lean against it and they're, oh, you're so serious. This shroud, of course, you'll die one of these days. What a shroud to live under. I couldn't imagine. Stay here, don't move. And they like make a gesture with their hands, and they like fade from view. And there's like this like shimmer behind where their form used to be, and it's almost like this glitter that kind of settles on the ground. It's just quiet.
I want some of that glitter, but I don't move.
Yeah.
Actually, so you're looking at this and you have this thought, and as you glance around you notice that along one of the railings there's almost this really almost imperceptibly fine, it looks like a dust or a powder, and it's almost opalescent. It's difficult to tell in light like this because you're already getting this sort of like twilight feel, and it's more of it's not like clear, bright light that you can pinpoint differences in color and things like that as easily in, even for elven eyes, since dim light can do that. And it occurs to you that you've seen this sort of, like in a city like this, there shouldn't just be dust around. That's kind of odd. Sure, it's foresty, but it looks like well kept and clean. And you see off in the distance, there is someone dressed in the color scheme of the guards you've encountered, but they're just wearing plain robes. And they have almost like this interesting looking cloth that has almost like filaments hanging off the bottom of it. And it itself is like a really dark brown color. And there's like a banister off in the distance from another walkway, and they're gently wiping it. And it looks like they're almost like collecting this whatever is on there. You don't, from the distance, they're not that far away, but they're close enough that you can tell there wasn't like obvious like dirt or anything on it. So they could be cleaning it or polishing it or shining it. But normally when you clean or polish or shine, there's not like a receptacle that you're brushing anything into. And you see that kind of this person kind of going about doing this before they head off into a different direction. It's very awkward. You're not being bothered by any of the like contingents of guards that are walking around because like several of them are just like in this area and they've kind of like seen the interaction that's been going on. But you're just standing outside of this door waiting to see what happens for a while. How long do you all plan to wait?
That's a good question, because I think time probably doesn't bother a Fae, really. So she may keep us waiting, or he may keep us waiting for a significant amount of time.
Could be.
Or they could have forgotten the minute they turned their back on us, and...
Very possible.
So I guess Tazin will probably give it like up to an hour personally, and then probably get antsy.
Okay. What about the rest of you?
As long as it takes.
Got it? Anything different for Nostril of Cadio?
I'll start wondering what's up at around the half-hour mark, I'm sure.
Okay. So you're all standing out there, and a few minutes pass, and there doesn't seem to be any like change in environment or anything. Like nobody comes out a door to greet you or anything like that. And after about maybe like 15 to 17 minutes pass, and you're all just kind of standing there. There's this like almost like a rush of wind, but it's not like a heavy like it's like a gentle breeze, but it travels longer than a gentle breeze typically would. And you hear like a laugh from behind you. Oh, you're still here. I didn't know if you would die by now or something. So you think you can help stop the world from ending, whatever terrible thing is happening? Tell me more about how you can do this.
With the guidance and divine light of Denier, in my case. Everyone else has unique talents if they wanted to.
Well, I'm an angel.
I'm an angel.
We've heard that Shah is up to no good, and each of us have been charged by the divine in that we are loyal to do something about it.
And he'll gesture to Wampum and say, this is clearly, I mean, just by his demeanor, he's a title. I say the title, whatever the title was. Of Moradin.
Very serious.
Moradin be blessing me, axe.
I just wonder if you all realize how odd it is that you just walk into one of the grandest cities in all the Feywild and ask us if you can help us. Whatever. She's decided that she'll see you. And they had like appeared kind of like behind you all and just started speaking, so you kind of had to stop and turn to like face them. And they just literally start to walk like right down the middle like path of you all, and so you'll have to like move out of the way or let them bump into you as they start like to head towards the doors. And they like, it's almost like not a skip, but kind of like that, this sort of just like lightheartedness that doesn't leave them ever, really, except when they're listening to one of you for too long and they're like, ugh, okay. So they go up and they open the doors, and you look inside and you see the inside is like similarly grandiose, and there's like the architecture is reflected on the inside with these like long columns, and there's these big windows, and they've got this beautiful I forget, like panes or whatever those are called, that sort of like diamond-y sort of like feel to it. But on the inside, the light looks brighter, as if they've probably enchanted the windows in some way to have a brighter light on the inside. And you see and hear there are people that are standing, elves, elven-looking creatures that are standing like guard, but the clothing looks different. There's a little bit more of like pearl tones, grays, but not the sort of like muted gray. It's almost like the natural beauty of like marble and pearl is like reflected in their sort of like armor and their garb. And this creature is like just kind of like not prancing, but like walking. I picture them like very Thranduil, like just like dramatic, and everything is like a production almost. So they start to walk forward, and there's another like archway that you can see up in the front, and beyond that there looks to be some sort of like grand entrance hall, and you can see seated upon a throne-ish type looking thing, if that was like, that's the sort of aura that this has. But what it looks like is this massive plant, not necessarily a flower, although you could say that this like sloping image is like petal-like, and there's another, it's almost like crescent moon shaped, and it's recessed in the middle, and then there's these two jutting like almost armrests that have these large like rose-colored crystals in the side of them, and it looks soft like how a plant or a petal would be, but there is this individual sitting on it. They have no pupils. Their eyes are completely white, and they have this really fair skin, long blonde, straight, very, very, very straight hair that kind of cascades down their arms and down the side of them. The garb that they're wearing, it's purple and sort of like a fuchsia-esque type color that fades to a very pale pink at the bottom. There are vines, almost, it looks like they're growing down the side of this gown. Little white flowers are interspersed, and as it kind of forms into this train, you see that there are maybe 4 or 5 different white and pink and purplish fuchsia colored flowers seemingly growing out of this garment as it trails down, and as the cloth ends, the end of this dress or robe is purely made out of flowers and leaves and interwoven vines, and it trails on for like 10 feet. It's this absolutely like ridiculous in a way, but just gorgeous. Very naturey sort of gown. And this, she looks very feminine, as opposed to this creature who is like very finely featured, but their dress is very kind of like straightforward. They don't necessarily like present with one sort of like mundane material plane gender identity. This creature is very feminine looking. They've got makeup on, or it looks like, or maybe that's just how they look. They've got these big thick eyelashes and these lines going up the side of their face. They've got a golden crown on their head that has a rose in the middle, but it's made out of gold. But there's it's like a rose gold sort of reflection to it. And they're kind of like sitting leaning against one of the arms, and their hand is draped across the other of this large chair. And the dress kind of like opens onto the side, so you can see them like sitting like cross-legged, like just lounging there. And their facial expression doesn't necessarily change as you're all walking in. But where this other creature looked very mischievous and like a cat playing with a toy, the expression that you see on this person's face is more genuine. They have like a slightly furrowed brow, and while their mouth is in a very like relaxed position, even without pupils and irises, there's no like color to it. There's like that slight pinch of the skin where someone who looks concerned might look at you, and they're sitting there, and this other creature is kind of like traipsing in ahead of you. And they're like, "I feel like this is more your purview, darling." And the woman sitting on this throne kind of not facepalm, but like shakes her head almost slightly. Just, you always have to be. You just. Thank you. Do you intend to stay? And you notice that there's several other individuals in really fine, like courtly looking garb, not nearly as grandiose as this figure in the center, But there's another sort of like dark-haired, really long, pointed-eared looking, maybe not necessarily archfey. This creature has less fine features in a way. They're not necessarily as like beautiful and glamorous as you would consider most fey to be. But they have this very elven look to them. It's like a harsh elven look almost. And they have like a very morose like countenance in general. And they sort of survey the room. And their hands move and they like disappear. And there's just like where the other creature disappeared and there was just like light flittery glitter. This one is almost like there's like a dark shape that's left behind that kind of like fades as they disappear. And everyone else looks like they have like a general elven look to them, but they have like this fine garb on, and you feel like this is probably like a court of some kind. And the one with the blue tongue that you had all been speaking to earlier kind of like turns on their heel and faces you, and they're like, "I have brought you."
I clap.
Imitate? Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's appropriate to bow. I'll bow.
Oh, yeah, I'll bow.
I will bow and clap at the same time.
And they look over at one of the people like off on the sidelines, and they're like, "All you have to do is just tell them to do something, and they do whatever they think is appropriate. Aren't these creatures so interesting?" And that like elven looking person's like it looks like a young man, but you have no idea how old they might actually be. Maybe Tazlin might get a beat on them being maybe like 300-400, you know, like you get that air about people, like they're older, but they still have that really youthful look because they're only like 300 or 400.
It's in the eyes.
Yeah,
You've seen some stuff.
Yeah, seen some stuff, but not as much as like a really long-lived elf, you know.
Like me.
Yeah, you know, and they're kind of like nodding, like And this one doesn't seem to fit the aesthetic or the tone of this room. Everyone here has a really like candid expression, or they're interested. They are Fey or Feywild creatures, so they wouldn't necessarily have the same exact expressions, but the juxtaposition is palpable between the sort of like serene setting in front of you of people having like conversations that have stopped and they've all turned their attention to this creature who's just like, here I am, and kind of like playing with you and stuff. And they kind of just like walk off to the side, and they sit down and on like this bench sort of like figure. It's like, it looks like it's carved from marble, and it's got this beautiful like leaf relief on the side of it. And they lean back and they just kind of like wave their hand behind them, and somebody hands them a glass that they had been holding. And they go, "Carry on." And like settle in to watch and see what you do.
Well, I'll like turn around and look at the group and be like, "Does someone do we want to introduce ourselves and make it brief? Or grand entrance? Give me a thumbs up for grand entrance, and I will
do grand entrance. I think they'll appreciate
All right.
grand entrance.
Tazlin. So how many feet? Like how long is this hall? I know you said that the pupilless one is sitting like at the end, draped over.
Yeah. The entire hall itself is very large, maybe like 100 feet or so, 80. From the entryway that you first came in, there's like a long, like dusty rose carpet that goes all the way to the back where this like thing is that she's sitting on, this like plant throne. And you could have walked as far forward as you would have wanted to. The other creature made it about halfway before kind of like stopping and making their production and going and just kind of sitting down to wait, settle in and see, you know, like what's going on here. And so you would probably, if you had followed them at any kind of a distance, probably be about like 60 or 50 feet away from the figure on the far side of the room right now.
Okay. So Taz will move like 15 feet forward, and he'll dip into a bow to the seated figure. Thank you for this audience, for me and my companions. We come to you under strenuous circumstances. For although time may slow and still, even gods are not above the changing of the seasons and the turning of the years. We are here on a divinely ordained mission set upon us by some of the very gods themselves. And we seek your assistance, even in the most minute of ways, in accomplishing those aims. And then Tassin will look to someone to continue where he leaves off. Like Lafcadio.
All right. Yeah, we're looking for people.
I am the scribe. I have chronicled our journeys throughout all of realm space. I don't have them on me anymore because I gave them back to Denier, but if you asked, I'm sure he would be happy to provide them to you. We've come a long way, and we're very appreciative of the fact that you've received us, because obviously you're very important people and have very important things to do in this city. We came to this beautiful, opulent land in search of two individuals, and more importantly, in search of knowledge. And we were hoping that you would be able to help us find those people and provide us with the knowledge or the power that we seek so that we can continue to save all of the realm space, realm time, space time, everywhere.
The continuum.
From horrifying, I get it's not really entropy, shadowy devouring, a horrifying shadowy devouring. We would like to help save you from it.
It is regrettable, the anxiety that you've come to. I can see it on your faces.
And she looks over at the other one who had brought you in.
I do wish you wouldn't play with them so. The stress can cause hurt to these creatures just as sure as an arrow could. And it's our responsibility to take care of others.
She looks like she was choosing the word carefully to not say, like, lesser beings, to be, like, rude.
And you know that the Obsidian already told us they were coming.
And the other one that's sitting off to the side, like, takes a drink and is like,
You seem to know more about this place than most mortals would. Although I don't think you know everything. There are guardians at the gates to the Feywild. Sometimes mischievous, but sometimes if they feel like someone should be allowed to pass through, they test them. And they report back to the rest of us. Or sometimes they do. In this case, they did. They said that you sought out someone who could help you. And we are among the most helpful here.
and she kind of like looks around, and the people on the outskirts like nodding in agreement.
There is definite truth to what you've said. There have been disturbances, and we've noticed darkness. Nothing that we haven't been able to handle so far, but you're saying that there is some sort of meddling by a deity? By Shar?
Yes. Yep.
Can you tell us more?
She seeks to devour the divinity of established shrines and founts of power for the gods in an effort to make a bid for the Shadowfell and supplant, is that the word? The Raven Queen.
Here you go.
I am pretty sure as well. Nos, daughter of Timora. Hello. Pretty sure she's not going to stop there. That she's only obtaining that to get everywhere.
That might have something to do with the incursions that we've experienced. Do you know much about the founding of this city? I know you're not from here.
Nothing, actually.
It was once a great fortress. In truth, there is still a great fortress, and she like gestures generally towards the like central sort of like citadel, the direction in which that would be placed. And she pauses and she looks around. Everyone else can leave for the time. And the other, there were like guards in the sort of like pearlescent garb that you had encountered that start to file out, and the people along the walls and sitting on these benches and at these tables where they've got drinks and various things, they all start to kind of like slowly file out of the room. And another figure that had been kind of off to the side sort of steps forward, and they're a very like well-dressed gentleman, sort of like a flair to their garb. There's like a long series of buttons, and there's a folded cloth in the side of like a pocket in front, like almost like a suit, but it's more like a flourish than it would be like a pocket kerchief or anything like that. He's got long sort of like silvery hair and these dark black eyebrows that are long and come up off of his face. Very like stately looking. And he steps forward and places his hand on like the side of the curved arch of this throne that goes over where she's sitting. He's quite tall. And he stands there just kind of staring at all of you, kind of like taking in like the surroundings and everything as everyone files out and the door is closed behind them. And he looks down, he says, "Are you really going to tell them?" "Well, not everything, of course, but enough, perhaps." "As you see fit." And he kind of takes like a relaxed posture and places his hand down and is kind of standing there like regarding all of you. And so the only people left in the room aside from you are the individual that you first encountered with the blue tongue, this woman, and the person standing to her right. She says, "Once upon a time, I suppose would be the best beginning for one such as you. This place was created to protect something important. And there have been changes recently that haven't happened in time beyond counting, beyond memory. And I think there might be a connection here, and we've had some looking into it." And she looks over at Kale, says, "I think I know who you're looking for, but she's very busy right now. So it would need to be very important to one of you for her to stop her work."
It is to me.
"I'm not sure of the other," and she looks at you, Taslin. "I might have heard of the individual to which you refer, but we haven't employed or requested insights of anyone else. If they're to be in the city, then perhaps they're here somewhere. We could try to help you find them."
If it is not any trouble, I am sure she will find me if she needs me, or our paths will cross by fate, if need be.
We make a point to be helpful Here. And she kind of like gestures to the now empty hall. But this is an odd time. I will see what information we might be able to find for you. And I will spend some time pondering the importance of calling someone away from their work. If you all would mind allowing us.
Before you depart, or before we let you confab, one other minor detail was important in our comings and goings. Once we've finished up here in the Feywild, which doesn't appear to be under imminent threat, we're going to travel back to the material plane and beyond, to battle the threats on the front lines, so to speak, where the fighting is the thickest. But we know that when we leave here, time has a funny way of catching up, or just doing all sorts of crazy things. It would really mean a lot and help us to be successful in our mission if we didn't return to the other planes with a great amount of time having passed. Because it would allow the enemies of all that is good and right to have a great advantage over us. As they would have been able to do things while we were just going from one plane to the next. So if it is all possible within your powers to ensure that when we leave this realm, that time behaves normally, or behaves the way that we might expect it to, we'd really appreciate it. And again, we're very capable people, and we can perform all sorts of useful tasks. So if you do need a service, we can certainly see to that. Because obviously you're very powerful in helping us, on our way. The least we could do is do something in return for you.
On that note, if the person that he's looking for, indicating Kale, is stuck doing something that they can't get out of, or they need someone to sustain. I'm not great with magic, but I do know that I can, for a time, channel energy. So if there's anything that I can do to keep whatever she's doing going, just until he does whatever he needs to do, I'm willing.
Or I could go to where she is. Either way, whatever. There's alternatives to just having her stop doing what she's doing, I think. Maybe, possibly. Could be not the case. I don't know.
You wouldn't be able to go where she's at. Time is important to you, I see. The arm that she's leaning on, she kind of like lifts up her hands, and her fingers are very long and delicate and almost like pointed at the end before they come to like the fingernail. And she makes this sort of like swirling motion, and the light in her eyes dims a little bit, and you can see it almost being drawn into her hand. And there's this, not like an orb necessarily, but there is this like magical convergence. It is emitting light. It seems like it's almost drawing it from her eyes and into her hands. And she's looking at something, and almost as if she can see into something, and is looking at different facets of it, begins to look around. So when you return is more important than where you return.
Yes.
I tend to agree. Like the light had like pulled back out from her hand and gone back into her eyes. Are you planning on asking them to leave with you?
No.
She's looking at Kale.
Mm-mm.
Perhaps this can be arranged. The person to her right, who has been standing here, he's like the one that's like kind of like dressed in this sort of like almost like suit sort of attire, takes a step forward and says, services? You would like to perform services? Is that what I've heard?
If you would require them of us.
Perhaps. We'll need to discuss it. The woman that's sitting kind of like looks over with a curious like expression on her face, like she doesn't really know what they're getting at. We'll need to speak to some others. If you wouldn't mind waiting outside. And she kind of like gestures towards the entryway that you came in at first.
Okay. They bow and walk out.
I follow.
Same.
Okay. So you approach the doors and they seem to open as if on their own. And as you walk through, there are the sort of like uniformed military type people that are standing there, and they close the doors behind you. And everyone's just kind of out here milling about. They're having conversations. Most of it is in Sylvan. Every once in a while, there are bits of other languages. What other languages does everyone speak?
Celestial.
Primordial and Elvish in common.
Okay.
Goblin.
Goblin.
Abyssal, Celestial, Common, Dwarvish, Elvish, Gnomish, Goblin, Orc, and Sylvan.
Okay. So, listening to bits and pieces of the conversations in Sylvan, they're talking about like charitable works and taking care of like the small creatures in the Feywild. And the things that they've done recently are like little bits of conversation that you're able to pick up. You and Lefkadio, who both speak Celestial, you don't understand the portion that they were saying in Sylvan, but you pick up, or you do, Kale, but Lefkadio, you don't pick up that part. But there's a couple of, there's like a small group of 3 who are switching back and forth between Celestial and Sylvan for some reason. In the Celestial bits of the conversation, they're talking about like a similar sort of like works that they have done, but it was like in service, and they're talking about it. It's almost like they're reciting something that they've said, and it doesn't necessarily sound like a prayer or anything like that, but it's just it's like unusual for this sort of a setting for creatures to be speaking something in Celestial, and they obviously are paying no mind to any of you, assuming that none of you have any idea what's going on. All of them. So you're able to glean in general, Kale, that a lot of these individuals are not necessarily boastfully, but almost like sharing the good that they feel they have done to each other, so they can congratulate each other on the like good works they've done for the lesser beings of the Feywild. And the couple that switch over to Celestial are talking about it being like in service to something greater, essentially, with this sort of like recitation. It's almost like there are repeating tenets that they have to take care of others, and that causing someone mental anguish is just as damaging to them as causing them physical pain. It's like, and they keep repeating it, so it's like I said, it's like tenets almost, or like a code or something that they seem to be like falling back on as they're switching back and forth between talking about the good they've done and then like recounting this thing that they keep saying. So after a time, the doors open again, and you can see the woman still seated, like gesturing you back in after the doors open. And this time, instead of the like gentleman that had been standing there, sitting on a bench nearby the blue-tongued person that you had originally met, is a dwarf.
Is it Wampum?
Yeah, did Wampum not leave with us? He just stayed in there.
Well, Wampum is with you. This dwarf has these really like icy blue eyes, and this long like chestnutty brown hair that's pulled back in a very tight bun, like a dancer style tight high bun on the top of their head. And the robes that they wear are long and draping, but they're
They're more like blues to them and greens, and less naturey looking and more. It's like reminiscent of a dancer. It's very like flowy, light chiffon-esque type fabrics. And even though they're seated, there's a moment where they like move their arm. She moves her arm, and you can see it almost like flowing behind her as if it were trailing. And the woman seating is gesturing you all back in. So I'm assuming you enter back in. It doesn't feel like much time has passed, but like time is kind of weird here. One thing you've also noticed, there is absolutely no there's no structure that accounts for the passage of time here. So the sun never moves. There aren't any like sundials. There's no clocks. There's nothing here to indicate how much time passes other than your personal internal clock and determining how long you think like the amount of time might have passed. So she gestures for you to come in, and as you enter, the doors close behind you again. And as this the doors close, this dwarven woman who for a dwarf has this sort of like it's not that she has like fine elven features, but when someone spends enough time in the Feywild starts to reflect in them. And so there's like a smoothness of skin, a sheen to their cheeks, like she's got a good highlighter. Like there is just like this sort of general air about her that is unusual for any dwarf you've ever met on the material plane. And as you all start to come in, she stands up, and every step she takes, it's almost like the fabric of the dress that she's wearing is almost completely weightless. Every step, there's like a silhouette, and it kind of like billows out behind her, and she moves very gracefully as if every single step she takes is part of some sort of dance that she's like reciting or just like is going on in her head, I suppose. And she looks over at you, Lefkadio, and says, "I hear you'd like to perform a service."
So I do my best to mimic the blue-tongued bow and obsequiousness. Like, absolutely, at your service, my lady.
I've been looking for someone to impart some knowledge upon. And you all seem to be far more familiar than most from the other planes with the goings-on here. There are many of us who study the art of music and dance, and as I have been apprenticed, I am now able to take an apprentice. And so, we can help you if you will stay for a time.
So the task that you are asking is for us to stay. Is that it? And
For you.
learn how to play music.
We can teach you anything.
That's so wonderful, and I bought all those instruments, Lefkadio.
All right. So, okay. I'm sorry. So you want just me to stay? Is that right?
You would be my apprentice.
So you are a musician?
Mostly a dancer. But I have some musical skill as well.
So you wish to impart upon me the gift of dance?
If you're more musically inclined, the music would be fine as well. We want to see what happens when someone takes our techniques out into the mundane world. And you've offered to perform a service, so it would only take a few years.
So yeah, obviously I would be thrilled to be the beneficiary of this knowledge that you would impart upon us, or on me. This is quite an honor that you do me. However, the years that you require they're not something we have in abundance at the moment. We are kind of in a bit of a pickle with regard to, evil beings trying to do evil things, and we got to stop them. So time is of the essence, and I don't, right now anyway, have years to spend learning at your feet. When we're done, 100%, I'm here, but I don't think we have the time.
She turns back to the woman that's seated behind her. She says, "I don't think they understand." And she's sitting there and she says, "You said that time would be important to you, and placing you back at a specific point in time would be one of your goals of coming here."
That's right.
So please correct me if I'm wrong. You are saying that if my friend is to do years of service in learning this art, that you would be able to place him and us with time as if no time had actually passed on the material plane.
The dwarf does this, and the woman seated goes, "The way things pass where you're from is a bit different, but as shooting an arrow, there are degrees of success. Too much time won't have passed. As long as you go first, then we'll have a goal. So he'll have to wait."
Okay, just to make sure I understood again. I would stay and learn, and the rest of my mates would go, and then I would spend years here, and then you'd send me back to my mates at relatively the same time that they returned. Does that sound right?
Once they've already been sent back, it will be like an anchor. You're already so closely bonded that we'll have a direction to send you, and you'll be able to find the rest on your own. I don't think there's a way that I can explain it that will necessarily make sense to you. But if we send you all back at once, we can aim for a general time. It's a process. Once somebody is already there, someone strongly connected to them, which you all seem to be, should be able to find their way back through the same process.
That sounds great. So internally, I like this is a win-win. Yeah, we get exactly what we want to get back, and I get to learn something cool. So I bow again, and I'm like, again humbled by the offer, and unless there's an objection by my mates, I'm happy to become your apprentice.
There's a lot of things that we would be assuming here. Forgive me, but we have no true guarantee that you have this power over time that you claim to have, or that you have it to the degree to which you claim to have it. Giving one of us up, basically, to act in your service for quite a while. Leaving one of us alone here for that amount of time could potentially be catastrophic. Right?
What do you mean, Kate? Oh, sorry.
Well, we would be gone for 5 minutes. We would stand around in a forest somewhere, presumably, and wait for you to return. And in the meantime, you've been here for years, and
years of not practicing your combat abilities.
Years of being influenced by the latent energy, not to mention the directly applied energy of the residents, the denizens of the Feywild. Remember, before any time before we came here, or sometime shortly right after, which you might not remember, but definitely this time, I've explained that for people like us from the mundane world coming here to the material, or from the material plane to the Feywild, can have really adverse effects if you were to even just eat a biscuit or drink from a stream. Can you imagine to what degree you would be exposed to the energy of this place if you were to stay here for years and years?
Well, I kind of see that as part of a benefit. Like I see how powerful you and Taslan are, and it, maybe it's the ancestry that you have, and if I were to stay here, perhaps I could become acclimated to the land, and I would aspire to be as powerful as you two.
Well, first off, you are. You've performed incredible feats, essentially on par with the things that we've done. But more importantly, my concern is that the more ingrained you become into this world, right, the less you might want to leave. And when I say if you drink from a stream or eat a biscuit, you will never want to leave because that was the best water you ever drank, or that's the most tastiest biscuit you ever had. After 2 years, it won't just be that. It'll be more. It could become more along the lines of you'll become more like these folks who look down upon us from the world of mud, right? And they view us as these lesser creatures.
Well, I mean, they aren't really wrong, but I do agree with Kale in that you from 2 years from now, maybe not even 2 years, maybe a week from now, hours from now in the Feywild, you may not be the Lafcadia we're speaking to now. You may be someone who has no memory of us, has no memory of what they were doing, has been brainwashed to help those in need, and is constantly drawn on other quests of the most importance. However, I walk up to him, and I'm going to give him a big hug, and I'll be like, if this is what you choose to do, I've already said goodbye to you in my own mind, so I don't need to say goodbye. You're an adult, Lafcadia, and I assume you'll make the right choice. And if you don't, it's not as if the gods will kill each other and the world will end, right? And I'll pat him on the back, and right as I'm releasing him from the hug, I'm going to whisper just soft enough that no one else can hear. Just remember to come back. And Taslan will have said his spiel, and he's going to act like he's aloof and doesn't care about this conversation anymore for the rest of the conversation.
What? Hey, Nos.
Hey, Kale.
What are you thinking about what's been going on here, about this thing?
Oh, you know the dogma. Ultimately, it's his decision. Opportunity knocks. You should probably take it, especially if we're dealing with a great dark force of entropy, and this place is the opposite. It may not be such a bad thing if he brings some of it back with him. I'm not afraid of change either, and I never have been. Usually, lasting change is for the better. But yeah, it's Slim. It's up to you. And if something were to happen to you, then I would, of course, see you on the other side. So we're never gonna stay separate forever.
I think it's an opportunity to take. I don't know that me forgetting myself or forgetting you all is a likely thing to occur. But if, a period of time goes by and I haven't returned, it would only be 5 minutes on where you are, or give or take. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but...
Well, see, that's the thing, and that's assuming that things go like they say they're going to go, which there's a lot of time in between for stuff to not happen that way. That's all we're worried about.
Well, I mean, we came here with the idea that they had the power to do the exact thing that we're asking them and they're offering to do. So that if we believe they had the ability to do it, and they're saying that they can do the thing that we're asking them to do, I see no reason not to take them at that word.
Well, it's because we're being split up. That's the reason why one is different than the other. When we're together, we find solutions to problems. We always do. You alone. We're worried about you alone. That's all.
And one can't just dance their cares away. Sorry, I know I said my piece.
But yeah, if you think it's an opportunity, it's good, then go for it. I have faith in you, and Nobanian will look over you, and I know Timora will too.
So does that mean yes? The dwarf is turned back around, and she's like,
Yeah, I think so.
wonderful. I think that's an even exchange, don't you? And she looks over at the other two, because the blue-tongued one is still sitting on the side, and they're just watching the exchange that happened, interestedly, and they don't react necessarily, but it was like a tennis match to them, ooh, 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 what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? And so they still have that kind of look about them, and the woman that's sitting there, it's like, whatever they'll be able to learn from this should be worth taking someone away from their work. It will take a little bit more time. I can explain to you the process of entering through this portal back in the meantime, and hopefully you'll become more comfortable with it. And perhaps we'll find out more about who you're looking for. And she looks over at Taslin.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I think that this is a good ending point for today. I know it went a little bit long. RP stuff, sorry. But so just to make sure you are still, wait, hold on now. I've got it in my head. Never mind. We're good. Okay. I don't
Okay.
know. I like a lot of moving parts that I'm making sure. Yeah.
2 weeks? 3 weeks? 3 weeks.
It'll be 3 weeks. Yeah.
But you can see me next week. Not next week. Next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for everyone that's still watching, you can see me, this guy, hosting a super cool one-shot with a bunch of nerds.
That involves puns or something, maybe.
Puns and rock bands. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Do we want to do the roundabout?
Yeah. I was I looked down and I was like, crap, it's 20 minutes after. This is a good time to wrap it up, I guess. So, I'm Katie Quixotic, and I lose track of time sometimes. And my favorite thing about today was throwing weird stuff at you and seeing how you guys reacted. That was pretty great. And the Feywild in general is just a weird place, and I'm enjoying doing things that I wouldn't normally do. do as a DM. Anyway, so I'm Katie Quixotic. You can find me everywhere, but I'll be kind of MIA for about 2 weeks, so pay more attention to all of them. And I'll let you guys take it from there.
Hi, I'm Carl. I played Lafcadia Whitehorn, the Tabaxi Warlock. My favorite part about today was the richness of the Feywild, the descriptions that Katie provided of the environment and the denizens, and just it's thick with texture and realness, and just wonderful. And that's it.
I'm Vinny. I played Killer Vine, half elven Cleric of Denier, all that stuff. My favorite stuff. Yeah, I mean, let's just keep this train rolling. Katie, it's very evident that you really are super into being in the Feywild and playing fey creatures. Like, it comes through so well, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, good.
I'm Casey, KCH on social media, and I've been your champion Timora and Pillar of the Plains Heckler, Big Fire Chicken Shoot, Fight the Storm, Slayer of Shadows, Nos the Boss, Neverwinter. Thank you. The ending there was pretty heart-wrenching to me. I can't fathom letting Lafcadio go. I know that it's not going to be years for us, or maybe I don't know. There's just like the headspace of my character is trapped in between the dogma of Timora, which is all chaos, and the conditioning ingrained in her from being a hobgoblin. Born to a culture that is very lawful and militarized and stuff. So there are these times in these instances and these dilemmas is what the word I was looking for, which she is totally just torn like in half. And this is one of those times. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing bad.
Hi, my name is Graham. I play Tazlin Evrio, your Shadow Arcane Necromancer Wizard. I said that all at once and didn't forget who I was. Nice. You can see me next week on this channel with a one-shot for, I always want to say Half-Life, but that's a video game.
Extra Life.
And my favorite part was, I mean, hands down, it was Katie, but you've gotten enough praise, and I can't let your head get too big. So I love the characters and their interactions and like how you play Feywild creatures. But also my favorite part is Lafcadio dancing his cares away, and that I love that this is the first time that we've had like an emotional option rather than like fight your way out of this, where it's like you're offered an ultimatum where it's like, yep, trade 2 years of your life, get what you want. And I like that these powerful characters are put in a position where there's an illusion of choice, but there's really no choice at all. And I also want to see Carl dance into 3 weeks from now, doing like a moonwalk in. Because his character's going to miss us a whole lot more than we're going to miss him.
If he decides to go.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, it was super fun playing today. I look forward to having an abundance of time and another really amazing DM that's just going to be like here with me to be like, help me plot things. So that's going to be cool when we come back. So yeah, I hope you all come next week for the one shot. And do we have someone to raid?
Yep. I will again plug the Extra Life charity. We are raising money next week. 24 hours of D&D for the Dell Children's Medical Center, part of the Extra Life charity. If you tune in to the one-shots, you will have an opportunity to win a D&D Beyond Legendary Bundle. And so in addition to supporting a great cause, you can indeed also win a great prize. The link to the charity is in chat. But yes, I do have a channel primed for raiding. Roll for Trouble, we'll try them again. They appear to be doing some sort of Dragon Age D&D. So,
I've played that.
Let's see if this raid works this time. But we'll see you guys later.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.